car's underway. Stamps his authority once again.
My word, this could go wrong.
On the brakes, goodness me, what a launch.
Look at that.
It just all comes down to this. And welcome along, ladies and gentlemen, to round 10 of your APC season. And of course, we are not at the USA Grand Prix just yet. We're going to have a little prequel to it, and we will have our second and final sprint race of the season. So just a reminder to those of you who do not know how the sprint races work here in the Almost Pro Championship, we'll be taking the championship order, we'll be flipping it around, and we will be going in that order as it is. But of course, my name's Joseph Black. I'll be taking you through the action today alongside Kyle Stewart Woodard.
Thank you, Joseph. Welcome along, everyone. Yes, we are here for the sprint. This is the second and final sprint of the season, and I'm looking forward to seeing what this throws up. This does mean, with the reverse championship order, that both Mercedes drivers will start first and second. And I tell you what, we've seen Dan Riley do fantastic stuff in reverse grids before, and we've seen him kind of do really well when he does start at the front. So starting in second, I think I would put my money on Dan Riley to win this one. Of course, second row will be the Kick Saubers. They've not done fantastically so far, but it's just a good chance for them to get some good points. We will have to wait and see. Luca Serafini does line up in fifth with the two Aston Martins. Of course, their success means that they are further down the order in this one. In 6th and 7th, Andrea Chenkovan, championship leader, should be last. But Bert Welly did not make it to the lobby in time, which means he will start at the back. I'm looking forward to seeing what they're all going to do. I'm looking on board at the moment, not on board, apologies, on the race director, and I'm seeing some very strange strategies, some strange tyres, but we know what these drivers are like. They will bait you into thinking they're going to go on a different tyre set, make you change your tyre, and then they will change it last minute when the countdown ends. All three compounds currently selected, but I'll be looking forward to seeing what tyres they're all going to go on when we get ready to start the 10 laps sprint around the Circuit of the Americas.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, and of course it will only be 10 laps of racing here at COTA, and in fact we will take you now trackside, and we'll get the opportunity to have a look at the wonderful circuit that we have on our hands. Just a reminder as well of our standings and the reason why they are in the order that they are. It'll be Andrea Chenkovan at the very top of the field, 178 points for himself. Second place for Ollie Matthews, 145. But I digress, because the formation lap is going to get underway and we'll be able to get going. But just to run you through quickly the order that we have: Owen Boldero, Lucas Serafini, Bert Welly, Ethan Shackleton, Alexis Mason, Aaron Petho, Regan Harding, Matthew Gatches rounds out the top 10. Connor Stewart Woodard in 11th, Harrison Robinson in 12th. Yes, I've just noticed the PSGL thing. I hope that's not going to affect you too much, Kyle. But Robinson, Moore, Ratto, Riley, Vickle, Garung, and Stone and Corlett round out the order.
I was going to message you off stream, but I'm going to assume that cannot be changed now. So we're going to have to deal with it. I'm not going to restart and then silent stream for it. But yes, you are still watching ABC. The logo is still on screen there, and the stinger should confirm that. I tell you what, how have we managed to get? You have to explain to me later how that all works, because that's something new to me and something that we may have to look at introducing. But yeah. You are still watching APC, the logo is still there, and I'm looking forward to seeing what this one is going to do. I believe, I need to double check this, you're going to bring the tyres up. Yes, Owen Boldero did stay on the soft tyre, so I thought I saw that. So I'm very interested to see what that's going to do in this lobby. All three tyre compounds have been selected, and I tell you what, he has the opposite strategy. There's your possible strategy, softs and medium. So curious to see what the hards are going to do. Ollie Matthews, of course, very analytical, knows this game very well, loves this game, and he tends to know what he's doing. So I'll be looking forward to seeing if he's made the right call or the wrong call here. The one thing we do know is that Owen Boldero is likely to be absolutely rapid off the line.
Yeah, he certainly will be. And, well, we will see where the Aston Martin ends up. But, of course, as we saw at the bottom, it's a two-stop strategy, or a one-stop strategy, two-tyre strategy even, for Owen Boldero. So we'll see how the Aston Martin is able to cope with that. Paul Garung will come to the line to get ready for his pole position. Dan Riley will line up alongside him on the front row on the hard tyres, so expect him to be a little bit slower off of the race start. Brian Moore will line up in third place, and it will be his Kick Sauber teammate alongside. Lucas Aracini will line up fifth alongside Owen Boldero, as we say, on the soft compound tyres. His teammate Ollie Matthews will be on the hard, so maybe another sacrificial drive from the Aston Martin. Chenkovan will be in eighth. Bert Welly will round out the field in ninth. Owen Boldero's missed his grid box, as has Bert Welly. Interesting to see the two Aston Martins going all the way through their formation lap. But as we see all of the advertising hoardings for PSGL, the lights are coming on in front of the drivers, and they are ready. The action gets underway now. Dan Riley got off to a good launch on those hard compound tyres. He'll be to the inside line of Paul Garung into the first corner. The two Kick Sauber side by side. Owen Boldero trying to go the inside of all of them into the first corner, and he'll get most of them alongside Brian Moore on the exit of turn one. Brian looking to the inside of Paul Garung, but it's Dan Riley who takes the lead, and it might be three wide just behind Owen Boldero, with Lucas Aracini making his way through, and Andrea Chenkovan, who's had a good start all by himself. Ollie Matthews dropping to the back of the order in the Aston Martin. He is ninth and last from, of course, where he started on the grid in seventh, so not great, but Andrea Chenkovan gaining 2 positions up into sixth place. And is Owen Boldero going to go for the move on Paul Garung? He's going to look to the outside and maybe switch to the inside, but no, Garung stays in second place. But the exit for Owen Boldero is going to be better, and so the soft compound tyres have taken him from sixth all the way up to potentially second.
Yeah, fantastic running from Owen Boldero. We knew he was going to be rapid off the line. I didn't expect him to be this far up this early. Of course, he's been held up by the Mercedes now, but he's managed to get past Paul Garung for second place. Now, he needs to make... Hey, I completely forgot to say it. Well, while the sun shines, he needs to kind of get all the way up the order here. Different race strategies appearing on the screen now, so that's very good. But he needs to make his way up the order as early as possible. Hope that he can build a big enough gap to the cars behind, and then... hold on to that position all the way to the end, but it's going to be a big ask. He needs to get past the fast starting Daniel Riley, and then he needs to gap him and drop him all out of DRS range, as Lucas Aracini will go up the inside of Brian Moore into the final corner. Brian Moore tries to hold on, but he's not going to be able to do so on this lap. He may well come back a bit later, but Andrea Chenkovan also wants a bit of this action up the inside of Brian Moore. Will he go up the inside of Lucas Aracini as well? He's going to try, but he thinks better of that one, and Lucas Aracini holds on to fourth position. Paul Garung, not the best start, given that he started on the medium tyres and Dan Riley started on the hard tyres. You expected him to be faster, but he just doesn't quite have the pace at the moment, and Dan Riley will be hoping to come back past Owen Boldero very, very shortly.
Yeah, Boldero made the move into the first corner on the second lap. It's called Big Red, which is potentially the most American name that there could possibly be. But he made his way into the race lead. Dan Riley dropped down to second place, and he's going to drop outside of DRS range as Brian Moore picks up a 3-second time penalty for going over the track limits. I think he just cut the inside line and cut the inside of the corner, so he headed back onto the back straight, and he'll be outside of DRS on Andrea Chenkovan himself. But Dan, at the moment, just trying to stay within range, and I think he just got the better launch at the start, and then Paul Garung focused a little bit more on the car in behind, which of course was Owen Boldero, and he's not been behind for too much longer, so it might be a swap between the two Mercedes. And Lucas Aracini looking to the outside line of Paul Garung. Can he make the way through? But no, Paul Garung is going to squeeze him to the outside line, and in fact Lucas Aracini is going to go off the track trying to make his way past the Mercedes, pick up a 3-second time penalty for his troubles, and Bert Welly, troubles for him. No front wing for the V-Cub. A very weird incident because that's a part of the circuit you don't really see anybody having any problems, but maybe contact with somebody ahead. We'll have to wait and see by the end of the race. But Bert Welly pretty much down and out of this sprint race now as we head on to lap 3.
Yeah, that would be good news for Ollie Matthews. It means he won't finish last on this one, although we expect to see him fight his way back up the order very shortly, because we know what his pace is like. He is, of course, the closest competitor to Andrea Chenkovan this season. However, Owen Boldero, if he pulls out good results like this, he may well get ahead of his teammate in the championship. As it currently stands, Ollie Matthews has got a good chance at this championship, but he's not going to be doing very much from 8th position. Of course, points paid all the way down to 8th position here in the sprint. It's 10 for first place, and it's 1 for 8. And all the numbers in between, as Andrea Chenkovan does look up the inside of Lucas Aracini. Doesn't force the issue too much. He's quite a fair racer, hence why he has so many championships here in APC. But he will just put off Lucas Aracini into the corner, and that will mean that he will be slower off the line, and Andrea Chenkovan should be able to come past him into the next corner. And so far, it looks like he might be able to. But this is the corners where you can actually hold on. And then the outside becomes the inside. Lucas Saraceni will have the inside for the next corner. But then the inside becomes the inside. And then becomes the outside again. However, Lucas Saraceni has done enough to hold on. But no, Andrea Chenkovan breaks really late. Locks up his tyres. But is able to control the car. But is not able to get past Lucas Saraceni on this occasion. And currently, here is a DRS train from Paul Garang all the way down to Connor Stewart-Woodard. That's basically all the cars except for Owen Baldero in first and Bert Welly in ninth.
Fourth lap is when Owen Baldero's tyres are expected to go off. And so we might see him fall back into the pack, but he's had a very good start. Andrea Chenkovan, massive send to the inside, might get two as he gets past Lucas Saraceni, might get past Dan Riley, who has a spin on the exit of the corner, saved by Saraceni going into the side of him, but there's no front wing end plate now for the Mercedes. Bit of drama as we start the fourth lap. Saraceni comes through the end of it in top position, but of course he's got that front wing end plate, and in fact, he's got both front wing end plates off. No damage for Dan Riley somehow, and well, Brian Moore is going to come through into fifth place with Andrea Chenkovan dropping down the order, and Connor Stewart-Woodard picking up a time penalty, a 3-second time penalty to add to his name, but a big moment for Andrea Chenkovan, and well, a bit of contact between himself and Dan Riley. I think there's a bit more contact this time between Ollie Matthews and Brian Moore. No front wing end plate for Ollie Matthews anymore, and that could be absolutely vital come the end of the race, side by side between Andrea Chenkovan and Brian Moore as we head down towards the next braking zone and towards sector number 3. He's going to get through on one, might have a look at the other one, but can't get through on Connor just yet. Lucas Saraceni defends the inside line on Daniel Riley, and he holds position. Andrea Chenkovan trying to fight with Brian Moore, and he's going to pick up the inside line of Connor Stewart-Woodard as he gets the slingshot into the S section of the final sector. Through goes Chenkovan, and in the meantime, Ollie Matthews through on Dan Riley to the hard compound tyres for the Briton, not quite working out, and well, he's had to succumb that position as well. Ollie Matthews, who's going to keep going through, is going to be on a set of those hards, and he's had a good fight through from last place in the field. Owen Baldero into the pit lane on lap number 5.
Oh, interesting strategy from Owen Baldero then. The predictive strategy did say you would have to stop on the soft tyres. I wonder if this is the mistake from Owen Baldero, if this was always his plan. Of course, we'll have to ask him after the actual race. Of course, no interviews after the sprint, but we'll ask him about that, if we remember, a bit later on, because that does seem like an odd strategy for the sprint here. But however, we're saying that now, you watch him go and win. But anything can happen. Safety cars can happen. We've seen what chaos could happen when cars get too close. And as you can see currently, Ollie Matthews has wing damage. Lucas Saraceni has wing damage. Lucas Saraceni also has a 3-second time penalty, as well as Connor Stewart-Woodard and Brian Moore. I think Dan Riley's penalty is also the same. I will confirm that shortly. But one thing I think to point out, Andrea Chenkovan, I don't believe he lost those positions by accident. I think he gave those back. He obviously went into turn 1 a bit too hard, and that meant that he went into the back of the cars ahead, and it caused that whole chain reaction that we saw. From what I saw, and I could be wrong here, what I saw, it didn't look like Andrea Chenkovan actually got completely, entirely span out. He got pushed a bit wide, but it looked like he was able to recover, and then all of a sudden he was back down the grid. So I think either he had hot tyres and made a mistake, or he done the right thing, the fair thing, and decided that as the incident was his fault, he would drop back and let everybody go back past him. But I would say we'd ask him later, but we don't get many interviews from Andrea Chenkovan. But I tell you what, it was worth doing because he's already back up into third position, and the Andrea Chenkovan that we know is now hunting down the top 2 positions.
Yeah, he certainly is, and he's up into the top 3 at the moment. And, well, he'll chase down Ollie Matthews now. The gap between Matthews and Paul Garang is 6.1 seconds. So the Mercedes at the top of the field at the moment with a massive gap over everybody else. 6 of 10 at the moment completed. And we're about to go into the second half of this race. Matthews will be wanting to close that gap, and he'll be wanting to ward off that pressure from Chenkovan. In the meantime, Owen Baldero, he's going to be much quicker than the rest of the field, but I don't think he's going to be able to offset that strategy because, of course, the idea was that he would be going about a second lap faster, but he came in for a set of the medium tyres, so it's not quite going to work out the way that the Aston Martin planned it. I don't imagine he had another set of softs banked up. He either made the mistake on going on softs in the first place, or he made the mistake switching onto the medium compounder tyres, but that is definitely not the strategy he wanted to go for. Outside line for Andrea Chenkovan, and he will get through on Ollie Matthews nice and quickly. The Aston Martin giving him the position, and he's got no end plate. So he's going to be a little bit more managed throughout the course of this race session. 6.4 the gap between Paul Garung and Chenkovan. I think this is, unless there's any mistakes, a coast home for the Mercedes.
Yeah, I mean, it's, what was it, 5 laps to go. We're looking at 1.3 seconds a lap. Like, it's a big ask for Andrew Chenkovan to do this. I believe, if I remember correctly, in fact, I can check my data here, they are both on the same tyre. So, yes, Andrew Chenkovan is often faster than Paul Garung. I'm sure Paul Garung won't mind me saying that. But it's such a big gap that Paul Garung would need to have a large mistake, or Andrew Chenkovan would need to pull out some godlike laps to take the win here. So, yeah, I thought Dan Riley was going to be the person who's going to win this one. It looks like it's going to be his teammate. I mean, Dan Riley won't be upset with 4th position. Of course, that's a great place to end. Just to confirm as well what I was saying earlier, it's 3-second penalties for Dan Riley, Connor Stewart-Woodard, and Brian Moore, but it's 6 seconds, unfortunately, for Luca Serafini. And as I'm speaking, it's another 3 seconds for Owen Boldero. So points all round at the moment, except for the Mercedes of Paul Garung, the Ferrari of Andrea Chenkovan, the Aston Martin of Ollie Matthews, and the RB of Burt. But Burt, of course, it doesn't really matter because he looks like he's going to take ninth place no matter what, unless something crazy happens in the middle of the field, which we can't rule out, as Owen Boldero will try and have a go on Luca Serafini. It's going to be an easy one on those fresh medium tyres. And that is Owen Boldero up to 7th place, 6th place, apologies, looking to hunt down 5th position from Connor Stewart-Woodard.
And if we were to just fact check there, I believe you meant penalty, not points.
Did I say points? It's definitely not points. Yeah.
But I'd be surprised if we neglected the top 3 getting points as we head on to lap number 8 with 3 laps to go. But it would be a very interesting way to shake up this race if we did a wild card and just went, yeah, everybody on the podium doesn't get points. That would be very interesting. I'd actually quite like to see that. Anyway, Owen Boldero, fastest lap of the race as he catches up to Connor Stewart-Woodard, and he's been very quick on this stint. So this promises for the rest of the race session itself. And, well, of course, while he won't be able to pick up a podium, you would imagine, in the sprint, the race session will be a little bit different. He's going to chase down Connor Stewart-Woodard, and his tyres are going to be in a much better condition. And he's got 3 laps to try to launch an assault on Connor, then gain 5 seconds on Dan Riley. And off goes Connor, through goes Owen Boldero. Complete front wing off for Connor. So I don't know if he's just locked up there, but it's a big mistake. He just went straight off. And unfortunate for the Kick Sauber, that will be the end of his competitive race. He might be back there fighting with Burt Welly for 8th and 9th.
One thing I can confidently say is that Connor does not run ABS off, so that would definitely not be a lockup, but he must have gone wide. I'm assuming, we assume he's done it on his own. I mean, I didn't see how close Owen Boldero was to him, but as he's got a penalty for his troubles. But that's unfortunate. He was running in 5th position, looked good for some decent points. But unfortunately, that is not going to happen for Connor Stewart-Woodard. He is currently in 8th position with Burt very close behind. And I'd say with the front wing missing as it is, Burt Welly will be passed at some point soon. Daniel Riley all over the back of Ollie Matthews. Both of these drivers on 7-lap-old hard tyres. And this is on pure pace. This is not tyre offset. Of course, Ollie Matthews does have a missing end plate. You don't imagine that would cause him too much trouble in the straight stuff, but I guess it could be a problem in the 1st and 3rd sectors. But with 2 laps to go, can he hold on for that final place on the podium?
We will see whether he's going to be able to hold on or whether Dan Riley's going to be able to get it. Even if Dan Riley does get it on track, he's going to have to build up that 3 seconds worth of gap for himself as Connor Stewart-Woodard into the pit lane to retire from this session for, I believe, the 2nd week in a row. But Dan Riley now chasing on the back of Ollie Matthews and is going to try and make a move out of the S section, try to get the power down. He's done so. Is he able to pull alongside the Aston Martin into the completely flat out corner just before the next braking zone? No, he's not, but into the next braking zone he goes, and he will try to be alongside. The DRS flaps will be in his favour as well. So the fact that he's alongside now pretty much confirms the position. And when those flaps open, he's going to give it a go and make his way past to the inside line and cut across. Dan Riley is going to try and take the position, but Ollie Matthews later on the brakes, big lock-up as he tried to fight back with Dan Riley, so clearly he feels as though the Mercedes can build up that gap, but no, Ollie Matthews dropping back in the end into 4th place on track. Brian Moore fighting with Lucas Erracini. Lucas going to squeeze him all the way to the inside. Brian's going to go for it anyway, and he's going to get the position. Fair play, good move, and Lucas Erracini going to try and fight back on the outside line, and he will make his way back through, and Brian Moore going to succumb the position this time, so it's about who blinks first, and I think Brian blinked first as Paul Garung onto the final lap of the race.
Yeah, on board with Brian Moore. I'm watching his stream again this week because he was the only one streaming when the session started, and he's going to go back past, well, he's going to try and come back past Lucas Erracini. Them two are going to stay battling it out till the end of the final lap. Ollie Matthews is back ahead of Dan Riley, although they are going side by side by the looks of it. I went on board with the wrong driver, so I didn't quite see that. But yeah, they're going to fight this one out. It makes sense for Ollie Matthews to hold up Dan Riley, because if Dan, I've just seen actually, I completely missed this. Owen Boldero is now on the back of Dan Riley as well. So this is why he's fighting so hard to hold up Dan Riley. I thought it was because he thought Dan Riley was going to gap him by 3 seconds, but no, it's pushed him into the DRS range of Owen Boldero. However, what this also does, it also means that he gives Dan Riley DRS. So it looks to me, from what I'm seeing, that Ollie Matthews massively held up Dan Riley into the corner, and Owen Boldero has a fantastic run at him now. So this is fantastic teamwork. You will be seeing this as a replay if you are watching post, but that is Owen Boldero past Dan Riley, and both Aston Martins into 3rd and 4th. So that is some fantastic teamwork from the Aston Martins. We've seen it before, and we'll see it again, I'm sure. But Dan Riley dives him into the 3rd sector there. That was an audacious dive. I'm going to hand back to you because I can see that we are going to go past the flag, check a flag. But that was crazy in the midfield, and we'll be seeing that back later.
Yeah, we will, and well, it was almost crazy at the end. Andrei Chenkovan right behind Paul Garung in the end. He gave himself a little wobble out of the final corner, but I'd imagine he was about a 10th back. Dan Riley will come home in that 3rd place in the end. Owen Boldero in 4th, and Ollie Matthews in 5th, but he'll swap up to 3rd with the penalties applied, and then we will see the next drivers come to the line. It'll be Lucas Erracini and Brian Moore. I think Brian's going to pick up 6th place based on the fact that Lucas Erracini has 3 seconds more worth of penalties, and then Bert Welly, in fairness to him, off the back of these two, not by very much, and well, they will cross the line with Bert Welly climbing above the two of them, I believe, and that will be the end of this race, the end of the sprint race. And in fact, he comes home, Lucas Erracini, I think, ahead of one but not the other, but we will see. And well, it is going to be, yeah, Bert Welly is going to be ahead of the two of them, but it'll be Paul Garung to take the win. Andrei Chenkovan just behind, and then Ollie Matthews, Dan Riley, and Owen Boldero with a good fight on the last lap that you can watch back on the replays. Bert Welly in 6th place, 7th for Brian Moore, 8th for Lucas Erracini, and Connor Stewart Woodard our only DNF. We will head to the race very shortly, but Carl, just before we do that, any final thoughts before we give ourselves a little bit of a break?
Yeah, as you say, it was another DNF, another retirement in the pit lane for Connor Stewart Woodard. I think we can probably forgive that one, given there was about 3 laps to go. He had to pit for a new wing, which would have put him out of the points anyway, and it was almost impossible for him to get in. I mean, there was a chance, but as we've seen, he would not have got back in the points anyway. But unfortunate end, again, for Connor Stewart Woodard. But he'll have another go at this later on when we go into the main race. A shame for Lucas Erracini, fighting quite well up in the higher end of the order, but had some issues towards the middle and then fell to the back with all the penalties applied. 9 seconds in the end for him, so that is not ideal. Great run from Paul Garung. This is his first win of the season, of course, so he'll be very happy with that. Andrei Chenkovan almost had him at the end, so he was putting those 1.3 seconds a lap. So Paul Garung will be very pleased that the checker flag came out when it did. Crazy bit at the end there. I'd be surprised if Dan Riley didn't get penalty points for that dive. It was very, very late, and it was very, very audacious, I would say there. So Owen Boldero did lose out on that point, but hopefully he'll be hoping at least that Dan Riley gets some penalty points for that. But Bert Welly got 6 in the end, so not a bad ending for him. Brian Moore got 7th, so a couple of points there for the Kick-Saubers.
Yeah, a couple of points indeed for the Kick-Saubers, as you say. And well, Paul Grung becoming the 5th race winner of this season. We will see you in just we'll say about half an hour's time as we head to the race with the sponsor boards we're supposed to have. Until then, it is goodbye. Right, welcome along, ladies and gentlemen. You've just heard from us a couple of minutes ago. The thing hasn't, for whatever reason, changed, so I will sort that one now. But we are back for race number 10. Of course, the main race itself is what we have upon us now, and what we will have is qualifying, and then we will have the 28 lap dash around COTA to finish ourselves off for today. Qualifying is going to be very interesting for reasons that will be revealed in a couple of moments' time. But as always, it is myself, Joseph Black, alongside Kyle SW for this session. And I mean, the takeaways that we can take from the sprint are that Paul Grung could have race leader pace here today. And, well, it's going to be very interesting to watch the dynamic between Daniel Riley and the two Aston Martins as we head to the next race.
Absolutely, yes. We can confirm that there was a disagreement after that race. We thought there would be. That battle was very intense on the last lap, and it did look like Dan Riley potentially broke a bit too late. Some will call it a dive. And yes, that will most likely, or I say most likely, it's confirmed that it will go to the stewards. So it'll be interesting to see the outcome of that one. But yes, we'll have to wait and see whether that battle continues into the main race and qualifying, of course. And yes, of course, Paul Grung, fantastic showing. However, any more laps, and I think it was given that Andrew Chenkovan was going to come past. So Andrew Chenkovan, of course, started on the last row of the grid and then came up to second position despite having an incident midway through. So yeah, great showing for Paul Grung. Can he do it again? We'll have to wait and see. Of course, we have actually got the reserve of Alexis Mason back this time out, and she will be in the Haas car of Alexander Vickel, as Alexander Vickel will not be able to attend this one as he's still on holiday in the countryside, and we still don't know which countryside.
Well, I'd imagine it's the Romanian countryside potentially, but either way, we will hopefully be seeing Alexander Vickel back very, very soon. But we do have a very interesting qualifying session on our hands for one very particularly big reason. That would be the rain falling down on the circuit of the Americas at the moment. So in Texas, in the middle of the deserts in Texas, it is absolutely pouring down to the point where the drivers are using the increasingly rare wet compound of tyre, which of course it'll be interesting to see how they will compete with. And we're watching Daniel Riley slipping and sliding, and he just had a moment that we didn't catch on camera, but he had a big moment that almost saw him sliding off of the road. Just a reminder then of your drivers' standings, and all of the standings in fact, after our first round of racing here this evening. Andrea Chenkovan, 185 points at the very top of the field. Ollie Matthews finds himself in second place, 161 for himself. And then Owen Boldero in third place with 112. Fourth for Lucas Aracini, and 95 points to his name. And then Bert Welly, 84 for him. Ethan Shackleton finds himself in sixth place on 80. And then Alexis Mason back in today on 68. Big gap then back to Aaron Petho, who is not competing this evening. Regan Harding is, though, and he'll be in ninth, with Brian Moore rounding out the top 10. Now level on points with Matthew Gatches. Connor Stewart-Woodard and Harrison Robinson joint for 12th and 13th, with Daniel Riley in 14th. Leandro Ratto, Paul Grung, Alexander Vickel, Aria Stone and Ollie Corlett rounding out the order there. And then in the constructors, Ferrari on 290, Aston Martin closing that gap down, and Racing Bulls almost reaching 200, so almost 100 points off of Ferrari. And then Williams, Mercedes, Kick Sauber and Haas, and then McLaren, who of course have no drivers anymore and have now dropped to the back of that order. But Aston Martin against Ferrari, well, I think it's going to be a great fight to end off our season with the two Aston Martins against the two Ferraris, and I think it's going to come down to the battle between Ethan Shackleton and Owen Boldero, because well, the top two just seem to be streaking away. But yeah, yellow flags in the first sector as one of the Haas drivers is out of the way, but we will get our first couple of laps on the board, and it will be Brian Moore, the first driver to set one, of course. Went out there early on the wet compound of tyre. Intermediates will be brought in later on as the dry line forms, but at the moment they are forming that dry line with wet compound tyres. Brian Moore around the final couple of corners and then around the final one to set his lap time. And the lap time that he is setting will end up being a 1 minute 53.373. Daniel Riley will come to the line second, and he will put himself with a 154.014, so slightly slower. What can Connor Stewart Woodard, Brian Moore's teammate, do as he comes around the final few corners? And will finish off on his lap time. It will be valid unless he goes wide or cuts the final corner. And I think he is going to keep it valid. And up to the line he will come. Where is he going to end up? Connor Stewart Woodard is going to put himself in third place. Is it fastest from any of the cars behind? No, the car behind, in fact, is going to go once again. Ollie Matthews, though, up to the top of the order. Alexis Mason, 150.768. So somebody already out there on the intermediates and making the most of them. Owen Boldero, 51.84 himself. He's going to go 1.3 ahead of his teammate. And, well, Luca Seracini splitting the two with a 52.7. And the fastest of all for Andrea Chenkvan. He jumps to the top of the order. But a split between the intermediates and the wets at the moment. But the intermediates appear to be king for right now, at least.
They do indeed, yes. So always very interesting to see the intermediate and wet offset. Of course, wet tyres, we rarely see them. It's often the case that the intermediates are the better tyre. So, yeah, be interesting to see how this one plays out. Of course, we've still got 12 minutes remaining, so a lot can change between now and the end of this session. Everyone going on wet tyres now may well set an intermediate lap a little bit later on if the track dries out a bit. Looking at our information, it is set to dry out slightly. Well, not dry out, but the intensity is set to decrease. So we'll have to wait and see if that is the case and if that's enough to dry out the track enough to go on to intermediate tyres for the wet runners. But, of course, Andrea Chenkovan at the top there, I don't know if that just happened. I wasn't paying attention enough, but he has set that on the wet tyres. So the times, and there's a bit of a weird incident, I don't know what happened there, but the times are very close between the tyres. It's wet for Andrea Chenkovan. It's intermediates for Alexis Mason, for Owen Boldero as well, and it's wet for Luca Seracini. So, yeah, yet to see which tyre is going to come out on top. As it currently stands, it appears to be the wet tyre in the hands of Andrea Chenkovan.
I didn't even notice that Andrew Chenkovan was on a set of the wet tyres. I thought he'd gone with Alexis Mason onto the intermediate, so that's interesting to see that one as Alexis Mason goes even faster on that set of inters. It looks like she's just going to keep going around and around for the time being and just improve on that lap time as she is wont to do. And her teammate at the moment, Ollie Corlett, has invalidated, is coming back into the pit lane. But we're seeing the majority of the drivers, or just over half the drivers, in fact, stay out of the pit lane. In fact, now that Ollie Corlett's in, it's going to be just under half of the grid currently out there on the circuit. And Regan Harding, interestingly, retired from this qualifying session, so he will not be able to take any further part. He will not be able to qualify any higher than last, and so he will not be benefiting in any way, shape or form, will the Haas driver from this qualifying session, and we'll see how he does heading in to race day, which apparently will be dry for everybody out there at the moment. In fact, it is a qualifying ban for Regan Harding, which is the reason that he did retire. So that would make a little bit more sense. I just forgot to check my notes before talking about it. But yeah, Regan Harding will be starting from the back row of the field, and he'll be the only one back there on that 7th row of this grid, with Bert Welly and Ollie Corlett at the moment lining up the 6th as more drivers out for their second runs, and it looks like they're going to stay on the same sets of tyres.
It does indeed, yeah. I was going to wait to confirm, but yes, a qualifying ban for Regan Harding. He has amassed enough penalty points to give him a penalty, give him a qualifying ban. That was compounded by a incident he had with Brian Moore last time out. Brian Moore reported it, and it gave Regan enough points just to set him over the threshold for a qualifying ban. So hopefully he'll be able to do something in the race. This may not be the race that he finally gets that elusive podium, but he sure will try, I'm sure. As you have seen while I was speaking there, Ollie Matthews goes on to provisional pole position with a 1:48.6, 6 tenths quicker than Alexis Mason. Those two are on the intermediate tyres. So I'm expecting to see Andrea Chenkovan come out on another set of intermediate tyres. I take that back immediately. He's on the wet tyre, and he has set purple sector 1, purple sector 2, personal best in the third sector, and that has given him a 1:47.9, 7 tenths quicker than Ollie Matthews on the intermediate tyres. So currently, those two tyres are still neck and neck in terms of performance, and I think it's just going to be about who's going to be on the right tyre at the right time. And yeah, there's a few minutes yet for us to see that. Still yet to set a lap is Bert Welly, who is my driver of choice in terms of who I'm on board with this week. I am watching his on board on my portable device. Ethan Shackleton yet to set a lap as well. And Ollie Corlett is currently on an out lap.
He certainly is. And we're watching on with Alexis Mason, who's improving as well. So the track conditions definitely getting better out there. But it's still going to be bad rain by the end of the session. So it's just about finding that dry line, and at the moment Andrea Chenkovan is on those wets, really extracting the pace. I think though that he's going to have to come in and concede that the intermediate tyres by the end of the session will be faster, although at the moment, as you say, it's going to be a split, and I'd say that probably the wet tyres are the safer option at this point in time, but the intermediate tyres are potentially going on to be the better option. Alexis Mason around the final corner, 47.1 for herself, and that will be up ahead of everybody else. Ollie Matthews also looking to improve on his lap as well. Lucas Serafini is going to start at 1. Brian Moore is invalidated, but he was 1.6 seconds up, and well, we'll see everybody else coming to the line. Ethan Shackleton ready to set his first lap of the day. Daniel Riley in the final sector with him, and at the moment we will see whether he is going to be improving on his lap from before, and in fact he is by a big margin. So Daniel Riley could become the latest competitor for the top step of this podium if he's able to hook up this final sector right. He's up by over a second in the first couple of sectors. I believe it was 1.7 seconds, if I remember correctly, that he'd found. So if he can find any more time in this final sector, he will give it a go. And well, those first few laps that he set were on the wet tyres, so it shows that the intermediates might be a little bit better, because those are the tyres that he's on now, and he's finding those improvements. Around the final corner then for Dan Riley. Is he going to throw himself into top 3 contention, or will he be just outside? Riley will get a 48.502, sticking himself in 4th place.
Great showing from Daniel Riley. We've seen he has got pace here when he's able to get a clean lap in. So hopefully he'll better do something and negate some of the damage caused in the previous race. And hopefully he'll get some good points out of this one. It's a purple first sector for Luca Serafini. Personal best in the second sector. So we'll wait and see what happens when he crosses the line. He is on his way round. However, it is going to be Connor Stewart-Woodard who will be next to cross the line. It's 2 personal bests for him at the moment. No purples, but 2 green sectors. So this should propel him up the order somewhat. What's it going to be as you cross the line? It's going to be into 4th position. That's a great show from Connor Stewart-Woodard, and that is on the intermediate tyres. So he's switched from a lap he did previously on the wet tyres to the intermediate tyres, and that has massively paid off for him. Lucas Serafini will have a go at the light. I think he's invalidated that lap, it would seem. So that is a no-go for Lucas Serafini, despite setting some blistering pace. Ollie Matthews, of course, who is back on top. I missed that. He set purple sector set 2 and 3. So another great showing from him. And I think this pole position shootout is probably going to go down to the last minute.
Yeah, I'd say the laps now, and even the laps at the start of the session, meant absolutely nothing because of the way that they've improved around this lap. And even I'm a big proprietor for going out straight away and making sure that you have the right tyres on. To just kind of like set a banker first. I'm a big proprietor of setting a banker first, but it looks as though here today that's kind of irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. You want to be going out there right at the end of the session because, of course, setting that banker at the start means absolutely nothing. Take, for example, Ethan Shackleton, who doesn't have a time at the moment, but he will be coming across the line with a good time, as Owen Boldero across the line with a very good time. Intermediate tyres for the Aston Martin, it's a 46.360. I think the intermediates are now the better tyre. I think the wet compound tyres have reached their limit. Around the final corner for Ethan Shackleton, his first lap on the board's a 49.2, but that doesn't matter all too much. What's Schenkervan on? Intermediate tyres. So now is very much the time.
It is. What's he going to do on those fresh intermediate tyres? Because if he can set that pace on the wet tyres, he'll be hoping to take it to the Aston Martins, who are currently in the top two positions, who have set their laps on intermediate tyres. Of course, Ollie Matthews, from what I'm seeing, I believe he set those on used inters as well. So he did quite a few laps on those before he set that lap. So that's a good showing from Ollie Matthews. Owen Boldero was on a fresh set, and he'd probably take a few laps on that. Although we are getting towards the end of the session now, so he may well put a fresh set on just before the end. But of course, you don't have to with these tyres. And it's second position currently for Paul Garung, the winner of the sprint race today. Sets a purple third sector, and that's a 1:46.4, splits the Aston Martins and puts him damn near close to provisional pole position. Andrea Schenkervan is looking to respond. It is, I don't have his at the moment. I think he's on an outlap. I'll come back to that. But yes, quite a few green sectors coming in across the field here. No purples currently being set. So could this time of Owen Boldero hold? Could this be the time he finally gets to get that elusive win? I am going to try not to speak too soon, as it is two purple sectors for Andrea Schenkervan on this fresh set of intermediate tyres. And I dare say when he crosses the line, this will probably be a good contender for pole position.
Certainly you would imagine so, and Andrea Schenkervan with just a couple more corners to go. He's got 2.3 seconds on his previous lap time. So at the moment, he is very much on. If he can find 0.4 of a second in the final sector to go up to the top step of the podium, Ethan Shackleton moves up onto the same row as his teammate. As his teammate steps up, what an unbelievable lap from Andrea Schenkervan. 1:43.735 for the Ferrari to go up to the very top of the field, and with a decent gap to spare. Luca Saraceni next to the line, he'll go up into third. The conditions are very much switched now. It is very much the intermediate conditions, and the Ferrari, unbelievable lap time at the very top of the order. 43.7, 1.7 ahead, or even 2.7 ahead of Owen Boldero in second place. That is a statement of intent.
Oh, I felt that from the Aston Martins. You know, I felt like I was in their car, and I just felt the blood rush out of their heads as they literally saw that happen, and then they I mean, I'm sure they were in shock and awe, the same that I was. If we had face cam on that one, yeah, you would have seen a very, very shocked commentator. But they have time to respond. They can finish their laps, and we'll probably just about get another one in, as that is a bit of an... That's Bert. Bert's retired. He's gone into the wall. I can't see what wall that is. I wasn't watching his stream. I just kind of glanced over to see what was going on, and I didn't quite see what wall that was. But yes, he is... That's not ideal for Bert. No time will be set for Bert, and he will start just ahead of Regan. But yes, will the Aston Martins respond? It's going to be one and done for them because they are on outlaps on fresh intermediate tyres. They will try to time it to get the best of the conditions. The Kick Saubers are starting their laps now, so they haven't quite timed it to get the driest of the conditions, but hopefully they'll get a good lap in, I'm sure. But yeah, it's all still to play for, less than a minute to go, and I cannot wait to see who it's going to be as Dan Riley decides that his time is done and he has retired from this qualifying session.
Certainly has done. It's been a weird qualifying session. And, well, it's coming towards its close. Ollie Corlett hasn't set a lap time just yet. Bert Welly went off in the final sector. He just crossed over into it. And he must have lost the rear and gone straight into one of the barriers you can see behind you, as Corlett has not been able to set a valid lap. He's going to go once again. Andrea Schenkervan's going to go once again as well. Ethan Shackleton is also going to have one more opportunity. And the Aston Martin crosses the line with just enough time, which does mean that we won't be seeing any more of Ollie Corlett. We won't be seeing any more of Paul Garung. But just about but Owen Boldero crosses the line with literally 1 second to go. Connor Stewart-Woodard is finding a second in the first sector, so that's a big amount of time for himself. Is he going to be able to throw himself up into front row of the field contention? Well, we'll have to wait and see, but it's a very good start indeed from Connor. And he'll be trying to do the same thing again through the second and the third sectors. And in the second sector, he has improved once again. So there's more time to be able to find for Connor. And is this going to be a contention for the front row of the field? He'll definitely be ahead of Paul Garung if he can find 2 seconds and some change as well, 2 seconds and half a tenth to be able to jump up ahead of the Mercedes, who was the pace setter in the sprint. He was the pace setter in qualifying at the start, but Connor Stewart-Woodard invalidates on a very, very crucial lap at a very, very crucial time. He'll start at a peak from 10th, or from 8th even as he crosses the line now, just 1,000th ahead of Daniel Riley. Brian Moore, the next one to the line, he needs to find 5 seconds to even be competitive in this session, and what a lap that is, thrown right in at the end. A 146.877, Ethan Shackleton's invalidated. There will not be any more lap times from him as Andrea Chenkovan around the final corner looking to improve on that 143.735 up to the line. 142 is the lap time he sets. Unbelievable. And Lucas Erosini invalidates with 1 corner to go. Alexis Mason wants to beat that 142. She will not be doing so. It's a 143.841 for herself. The 2 Aston Martins last to the line. Boldero's invalidated. Ollie Matthews into 3rd. Andrea Chenkovan has managed to take that pole position by some margin.
142.609. 3 purple sectors on that last lap. Andrew was 5 tenths quicker than Alexis Mason, who was the closest competitor in the first sector. 4 tenths in the second sector. And 4 tenths in the third sector. In fact, Ollie Matthews went faster than Alexis Mason in the third sector by a tenth. So that is unbelievable. So we know what Andrew Chenkovan's all about. We've seen him do this before, but that was an unbelievable lap time.
Certainly was, and it put him on pole position by over a second ahead of Alexis Mason in second place. Ollie Matthews finds himself in 3rd, and Owen Boldero will be in 4th with a big gap forward to his teammate. Then not so much of a big gap back to Ethan Shackleton, 0.03 of a second between Boldero and the Ferrari, and then only 0.05 back to Lucas Erosini. Paul Garung finds himself in 7th place, and then Brian Moore. Connor Stewart-Woodard and Dan Riley split by just the 1,000th, and then Burt Welly, Ollie Corlett and Regan Harding to round out the order. But we're set, I think, for another absolute classic of a race here around COTA.
That we are. We've got Alexis back. Of course, we know what Alexis can do. We know Alexis's pace. And she is going to try and get another win here. Of course, I think every time actually they've gone on track together, Alexis and Andrew Chenkovan. Alexis has finished ahead. However, there was that penalty that of course put her in second place at Saudi Arabia. But Aston Martins need to do everything they can to keep in championship contention. They are not quite close enough yet to be safe, but they are close enough that they can still do it before the end of the season. But yeah, they're going to need a miracle here. They're going to need both of those cars to finish ahead of Andrew Chenkovan. But we saw last week, Andrew Chenkovan is fantastic, but he's not bulletproof.
No, and that's been something that we've discovered this season, is that Andrei Chenkovan is not bulletproof. He's not impenetrable. He can take the opportunities when he needs to take himself to the top of the field, of course. But there are some opportunities where it doesn't quite work out for him. So for Andrei Chenkovan, this is a day about proving us very wrong, and I'm sure that we will be blue in the face at the end of this session, which is about to get underway. But tighter strategy around here. Of course, we saw Owen Boldero go for a different one to everybody else. The suggested one was the mediums. Owen Boldero went for the softs. A couple of the other runners went for the hard compound of tyre. However, around COTA in the main session, of course, because it's almost 3 times the length, it's going to be a one-stop strategy, hard to medium or medium to hard. For the drivers, we can go for a massive undercut lap 8 up to lap 13, so it's a very big pit window, and then the hards to mediums, it'll be lap 17. Well, they'll be looking to come in for the first time and doing around 12 to 13 laps on the mediums, I think, as we will see the drivers doing. So it's going to be, hopefully, a dry race ahead of the drivers. But, of course, we'll have to wait and see. It looks very dry down there at COTA, and the fans are eagerly waiting in anticipation for the race session to come.
It looks very dry indeed, and we mean that in the precipitation sense, not in terms of boredom. This is going to be a great race, I am sure, and I'll be watching it on board from Welly's car as well, just to see what he's going to do from the back. So I'll keep you updated as this lobby goes on. One thing to note is that both A's were not attending this week. Aaron Petho is also not attending this week because Aaron is sitting an exam tomorrow. That's the reason he's told us, and he wants to get some good sleep, and we can't blame him for that. As much as we love to see all these drivers go racing, they've obviously got other lives that they need to do outside of APC. And I've just seen Alexis Mason not move there. Stopped, moved again. So hopefully not a pedal issue for Alexis. Of course, it doesn't really matter on the formation lap. It matters on the real start. And I've just seen Ollie call it in 12th. So did I miss a penalty or something there? Maybe he didn't set up. Yeah, I'll have to look back on that because I completely missed that. But yes, Andrew Jenkovan will start in the position he knows well up front. And he will run away on the formation lap because that's what he always does. Although, maybe I spoke too soon. Before you heard me on the stream and went, oh, no, I don't think so. We're also expecting the Aston Martins to crash each other out. However, that didn't happen in the sprint. So maybe somebody's realised that that's actually not the best thing to do. Maybe they heard Joseph on stream last week. But we will see. We've got 2/3 of a lap still to go. The Aston Martins, not the Aston Martins, the Kick Saubers are also together. And they are sandwiched by the Mercedes. Then it's not a Mercedes sandwich, it's a Kick Sauber sandwich.
Yes, it certainly is, and Ollie Corlett did not set a time in qualifying, which is why he finds himself in 12th and right at the very back of this field. Only Regan Harding is lower than the Haas driver in this session. His teammate finds herself in second place as Alexis Mason, and in a very good spot to potentially challenge Andrew Jenkovan into turn 1. We saw an incredible race start from second on the grid from Dan Riley to start off today's action in the sprint race earlier on. We might be seeing the same thing from Alexis Mason. She's going to give it a go in this one, and well, she's going to do so on the medium compound tyre. Andrea Jenkovan, Paul Garung and Dan Riley, the only drivers to start on the hard compound of tyre. Everybody else on a set of the mediums. So they've gone for the alternate strategy, which means they'll be slower initially, which for Andrew Jenkovan could spell the fact that he will drop back down into the order. He's going to want to avoid that, but of course some things are unavoidable, and with the way that those hard compound tyres were in the sprint, I think it may well be unavoidable that he'll be dropping a little bit, at least, down the order. There seem to be about 5/10 of a delta between the two cars, or between the two tyres even, as everybody rolls up to the line. Everybody stayed pretty close. Andrew Jenkovan usually bursts away, but this time the only thing he burst out of is his grid box, as, well, he ended up parked in the wrong spot. Alexis Mason took her time to come to the grid. Will be behind Owen Boldero, will be behind Lucas Erosini. We'll go through them, ghost through the two cars, up to the line, and then I believe that'll be Daniel Riley right up the very back. Yes, indeed it will. It'll be the last one to come to the line, with Regan Harding just about parking up now. So a couple of drivers taking their time to make sure they're in a good position to get going here for the main race itself. We had our sprint race, which was filled with drama from start to the very last lap, and now we have the main race itself. The drivers are ready, and the action's underway here in COTA. Alexis Mason off to a good launch. Owen Boldero off to an even better one, and he's going to be alongside them into turn 1. It was almost 4 wide. Late line from Owen Boldero, who tries to take first into first, and there's contact between the drivers at the top. Ollie Matthews caught up in it. He's going to drop down the order, the least of the least of the best starts for himself. The worst case scenario for the Aston Martin team, because he finds himself down the bottom, and Alexis Mason finds herself at the very top of the field. Andrea Jenkovan, not a very good launch. I think he might have had the contact with Ollie Matthews, and so he's dropped down to 4th. Ollie Matthews down to 5th. Is there damage on either of the cars? I don't think there's any damage for the Croat. Is there any damage for the Aston Martin? No. So it'll be Alexis Mason leading the way. Andrea Jenkovan dropping to 4th, and Ollie Matthews dropping to 5th as Regan Harding gains 2 off of the race start.
Fantastic start for Regan Harding. 2 positions up. No idea what happened to Paul Garung. He, of course, started a lot higher up than that. And now he finds himself out of the points. It looks like it's going to be Bert Welly going up the inside of 2 cars there. As he pulled that off, I think there was some contact, but I think he's just about got ahead of those cars. And that's got him into 7th position, just behind Daniel Riley. Connor Woodard does want to have a go on him, but Ethan Shackleton says, I'll have a bit of that. And of course, anyone who remembers, I think it was 2 seasons ago, Ethan Shackleton took the podium from me on the last lap at that same corner by doing that exact move. He knows how to get around that corner just in the space that's available as Connor runs wide there, but doesn't pick up a warning. He'll be pleased to know. He said he validated a 146.3 in the quali session when we saw him run wide there, and he was not happy about that. But Welly's going to gain another position there on Daniel Riley. So I think Bert Welly has the best start of anyone so far. This is not great for Andrew Chenkovan, who now obviously falls behind Ollie Matthews as well. So he is the biggest loser. Oh, he's not actually. Paul Garung's the biggest loser. Then it becomes Brian Moore and Andrew Chenkovan. But the highest gainer there is Bert Welly, as I said, and I have the pleasure of seeing his stream live and seeing how he pulls those moves off. So he'll hope to continue and get towards the podium and join his teammate up there. And Alexis Mason will hope to run away. I tell you what, this is a good opportunity for Haas. Haas have not been able to get fantastic points this season. They've been midfield with Matthew Gatchis before he went to become a reserve. But yeah, good opportunity for them to get some points. And Ollie Corlett will be hoping to contribute to those.
Yeah, just inside the top 10 at the moment for Ollie Corlett, but with the DRS, both of the drivers fighting for just inside the top 10 are going to keep that fight going on for a little bit longer, I would imagine. But Ollie Corlett at the moment staying, waiting in behind, and waiting in behind Connor Woodard, just ahead of Regan Harding, who in himself wants to make that move, but has not found the opportunity just yet to try to have a go at the car ahead. We end the 3rd lap with Alexis Mason still in the lead of this race, and 5/10 ahead of Owen Boldero in 2nd as Ollie Matthews tries to catch up to Lucas Erracini, who's the 2nd biggest gainer off this race start. Bert Welly is the biggest, and joint 2nd is Seracini, and is Daniel Riley, and now is Regan Harding, as it's a poor exit out of the final corner from himself as he tried to gain that position off of Ollie Corlett. And in fact, he might lose another position into turn 1. He might lose 3 as Paul Garung tries to find his way through as well, and he does. Garung might make his way through on Corlett, but no, Corlett back to the outside line, and I think Garung felt a little bit dirty about that move and handed that position back. Dan Riley right on the back of Ethan Shackleton trying to find a move, and he knows that there's going to be a move down the back straight so he can find his way through and jump up into 7th place, which would be a good move for the Mercedes and the Mercedes team, who are hoping to continue their charge in the championship at the moment, because Paul Garung and Dan Riley, an unlikely team at the start of the season, but a team that I'd say have worked pretty well together. And Dan Riley now finding himself in a strong position. He found himself in a good position in the sprint, was not able to capitalise. His teammate was massively able to capitalise. Ollie Matthews has had a problem.
Yes, he went too late into the corner and he's hit Alexis Mason, and that's pushed Alexis wide, and that means Alexis Mason has dropped 2 positions to 3rd position and spun himself out. I didn't see it. I wasn't watching it properly, if I'm honest. I was watching it, but like, you know, when you watch it in hindsight, you see something different. But from what I saw, and in that moment live on your screens, it looked like it was completely his fault, and he has no one to blame but himself. But of course, I could have got that wrong. And if you're watching this with the replay, you'd be there going, Carl, what are you talking about? That's not what happened. But that's what I saw. That's what I believe happened. But he'll be looking to try and come back now. Now he's ahead of his championship rival. Why do I keep doing that? Andrea Chenkovan. And as Bert Welly is now also gone down the inside of Alexis Mason. So we just missed that. Bert is now in 3rd position as well. So I don't know if Alexis has damage. It looked like Ollie hit Alexis from behind. So I don't think Alexis does. So not quite sure. Alexis must be a bit shaken. I'm not sure what's happened there. But she is now falling down the order for some reason. But with Alexis falling down the order, that means we've got some great racing ahead of us. So it's not a bad thing from a neutral standpoint. But this is a bad thing from an Alexis Mason standpoint. Owen Boldero benefited from that and is now running away with the lead with Lucas Seracini behind. But Lucas Seracini doesn't have DRS at the moment. And Andrea Chenkovan is ahead of Ollie Matthews. Ollie Matthews, of course, being the closest in the championship, will be hoping to finish ahead of Andrew Chenkovan on every race going forward. But currently, He may not be able to do so as Alexis runs Andrew Chenkovan out wide there. That was Alexis's corner. Ollie wants to capitalize on this. He tries to go around the outside of Andrew Chenkovan. That will become the inside, but is he alongside enough? He is, but Andrew Chenkovan will try and hold it as well. And they're now still going side by side through this long sweeping right-hander. Andrew Chenkovan might better get ahead before the next corner. If he doesn't, it would be Ollie's corner. Ollie will sweep round the outside, take that position back, and that is a great overtake from Ollie Matthews.
Yeah, very good indeed from Ollie Matthews to make his way up ahead of Andrei Chenkovan, who over the last few races hasn't seemed to have the regular Chenkovan pace that we've gotten so used to seeing. And so it's odd that we're seeing him dropping down the order. But as you say about Alexis Mason from a neutral standpoint, it's good to see the cars that we'd usually be expecting up at the top struggling a little bit more, which means everybody else in the field has the opportunity to fight for stronger positions. And Owen Boldero currently leading the way, second place currently held by Lucas Aracini and Bert Welly rounding out the podium. An unlikely podium, but it would be great if it did end this way. Because of course they are all drivers who we hope do very well. We hope that they all do well, but of course there is different exceptions that can be made when somebody appears to be a little bit too dominant. Ollie Corlett with a 3-second time penalty added to his name for multiple warnings that will be added on to his time at the end of the race. Not very fortunate for the man currently running in last place. Dan Riley and Ethan Shackleton side by side, something that's been said by commentators in this league I'd imagine a million times, but in the end Dan Riley threw on Shackleton and jumping up into 7th place. Riley needs to bridge that 2-second gap to Andrei Chenkovan, but I don't think that he will be able to do so just because of the pace of Andrei Chenkovan and the fact that he's not going to be that much slower, especially as he's got that DRS on Ollie Matthews ahead. So he's going to remain in position. They're all going to remain in position and in station as it stands as we head on to what will be lap number 6 of this race. And Owen Boldero continues to lead the way and continues to try to build that gap up ahead of Lucas Aracini in second place. 2.1 at the moment, and that keeps going up and up and up. It was 0.4 improved on the previous lap time in terms of the gap increasing between the two, and Lucas Aracini is in second place, and now his teammate, who was in third, drops down to 4th behind Alexis Mason.
This is what we were talking about. You know, Alexis lost out massively in that incident, but now we get to see Alexis carving her way back up the field, and she will probably, I'd like to say, enjoying the battle and actually enjoying having to work for it. But of course, we know Alexis loves to win, and she often does. So Ollie Matthews is now the next closest. Well, actually, it's going to be Andrew Chenkovan who is going to try up the inside of Ollie Matthews. I was going to say Ollie Matthews is about to take Bert Welly. He's extremely close. But Andrew Chenkovan said, I don't think so. I'd rather come past instead. He is on the hard tyres. So he is actually the hard tyre leader now. And he will be looking to capitalise on having better tyre life at this stage. But he is going to try and stick it around the inside of Ollie Matthews. This is not the best camera angle. Thank you, Codemasters. Ollie Matthews is going to try and hold this position. Of course, Ollie Matthews went from being the aggressor. And he's going to do an Ethan Shackleton there is Andrew Chenkovan. He's taking tips off his teammate. And he's going to do a late dive into that open corner. But however, where Ethan Shackleton was able to pull it off twice, Andrew Chenkovan wasn't able to pull it off on this occasion. Ollie Matthews is still within the DRS range of Bert Welly ahead, so that battling hasn't ended his chances at getting 4th position from Bert and potentially 3rd positions from Alexis Mason. But this will not be helping his chances of a win. Of course, he won't be upset if the win goes to his teammate. They are great teammates. They get along very well and they work together. However, it is Ollie Matthews who is the closest as he loses the backing coming out of the first corner there. Andrew Chenkovan almost became an innocent victim there, but was able just to avoid it. It's Ollie Matthews who is the closest to challenging Andrew Chenkovan for the Season 10 championship. However, Owen Boldero is not out of it yet either.
Yeah, and also the Constructors' Championship, they do have to think about that at certain points, and I think they're going to be thinking about that right now. Ollie Matthews trying to defend the outside for Andrew Chenkovan is where the Ferrari plumps to go, and he's going to try and go the long way around. They'll continue down the straight, and who's going to get the better exit out of the corner? I think it might be Chenkovan, but I think the faster car in straight lines will be Ollie Matthews, who will remain ahead and will take the inside line into the next corner. But it's relatively even between the two drivers, so I'd be interested to see what sort of wing setup setup they've both gone for. It means the inside line for Andriy Chenkovan for the next corner will be beneficial, and he'll be able to make his way through as Ollie Matthews able to do the up and under, or maybe the up and under part 2 around the outside into the next braking zone. He has a look, but no, I think Andriy Chenkovan just has this position on lock at the moment, and he moves up a position up into 5th place. This could be a very important fight though for later on in the championship. Don't forget, as you say, these two are championship rivals. If Ollie Matthews is able to gain any advantage on Andriy Chenkovan, gain any ground, and even if he's not, then this will be a good race for Aston Martin in terms of the constructors.
Indeed, as Andriy Chenkovan does get past Bert Welly, and that was a nice clean overtake around the outside. It was the inside, apologies, which then became the outside as Bert tried to tuck back in. But Andriy Chenkovan will get that position. As I say, he is the highest runner on the hard tyres. That is followed by Daniel Riley. So we expect at this stage for him to be the fastest on track. However, he needs to push to get back in to the DRS range of Alexis Mason, which he has done. As Alexis is struggling on those 7-lap-old mediums. But yes, as you say, it will be important later on in the season, as that is the second penalty for Ethan Shackleton. No, it's the first penalty for Ethan Shackleton. I'll check that in a minute. I will say that Regan Harding, true to his name, has currently got 8 warnings and will be getting multiple penalties this race, it would seem. Connor Sherwood are doing very well to not get any himself, but he is battling with Regan, who is now past him. I did miss that, but I do believe that was on the replay cams, as Regan and Ethan Shackleton are fighting on lap number 8. Andriy Chenkovan well within the DRS range of Alexis Mason. Alexis Mason will not be pleased to see Andriy Chenkovan come past, but I'm sure she was expecting it to happen at some point, being on a different strategy. Ollie Matthews will try to finally come past Bert Welly now that Andriy Chenkovan is not part of that fight, and he'll be hoping to try and get himself back into some sort of contention here. I'm assuming the podium would be a goal for him, but I don't believe, joined us for an interview earlier, so I'm not sure.
Yes, and speaking of the interviews that we got the opportunity to have with some of the drivers earlier, Ollie Corlett, who is currently in last place, was one of those who joined us. He was very excited for today's race. He's fairly strong around Kota, and he'll hope to be able to challenge with the Saubers and score some solid points for Haspel at the moment. He is challenging with a Sauber, but it's outside of the points. He's looking to build from his DNF at Baku, and he's actually made the switch from controller to wheel. So this is his first race on wheel, and you can imagine how difficult that is to make that switch. And I'm sure that we can have a word with Owen Boldero even about that after the race, because we know his opinions on racing on controller on this game. He wants at least a top 10 finish, does Ollie Corlett, and he's excited for the opportunity to score some points and close in on the 2 Kick Saubers late on in this season, as Andriy Chenkovan threw on Alexis Mason, potentially Bert Welly defending from Ollie Matthews, who's to the inside line, who will be alongside as Alexis Mason back through on Chenkovan, giving him a little bit more of a go than Bert Welly and Ollie Matthews were able to give Chenkovan. But now trying to hold the outside line, but not enough grip to keep it the long way around is Ollie Matthews. So he's going to tuck in behind. Don't forget, as I said, the pit window is open right now. It started on lap 8. Lap 9 would still be a little bit early. Lap 10 is when I'd be expecting the first driver on the undercut to make their way in, but it is a possibility to get to the end of the race from here. We did hear from Lucas Aracini as well, currently running in second place, who felt like he used up all of his luck this season in Baku, and as we will go back to that in a minute, as Alexis Mason, trying to defend the inside line, is successful once again on Andriy Chenkovan. Ollie Matthews, trying to defend from Bert Welly, is able to do so and has managed to make that position up to P5 confirmed now. Lucas Aracini says his tyre management should be strong around Kota, and he's hoping and expecting a podium for this race. And he is currently holding himself in pretty good stead.
Absolutely, yeah, as Dan Riley is now hustling the back of Bert Welly. Of course, Dan Riley being the second driver on the hard tyres and is hoping to join his tyre mates. I don't believe that's a word, but that's a word I'm going to try and make happen up in 4th position. Make that 3rd position as Andriy Chenkovan goes flying past Alexis Mason down that long back straight. Alexis Mason will try and hold on, but Alexis's tyres will be screaming at this point. 10-lap-old medium tyres. They're still got wear on them. They're not going to pop anytime soon. But they are not going to be comfortable to drive. And as you can see, as Andriy Chenkovan goes through that third sector there, just has much more grip. And Alexis is powerless. Alexis will try and hold on to the DRS. But looking at this, Andriy Chenkovan may well have dropped Alexis from the DRS. And that might be Alexis's cue to pit. And we will see if Alexis will do that. And it's going to be a no at this stage. But no, it's not. It is going to be a yes. I just wasn't watching the correct part of the track. I felt that was coming. And this could be a good undercut attempt for Alexis on Luca Serafini and Owen Boldero, who are in a world of their own at the moment, up at the front. And that is Owen Boldero ahead of Luca Serafini. But Luca Serafini has been chipping away at that lead. And Luca Serafini is now in DRS range.
Certainly is. He's within DRS range of Owen Boldero at the very top of the field, despite the fact that he's using those very worn hard compound, or those very worn even medium compounder tyres. And well, Owen Boldero doing the same thing. So Luca Serafini potentially being helped by the fact that he's got Andriy Chenkovan behind him, because then he's under a lot of pressure and Chenkovan actually makes his way through on the inside line. But he might have sent himself too wide, but not enough grip for Luca Serafini to be able to capitalise on that, and he will tuck back in behind in third place. But the DRS is open for the both of them as they close in on Owen Boldero. I think now might be a good time for the Aston Martin to dive into the pit lane and make the switch of tyres, because he's managed to run in clean air all this time as, well, Dan Riley makes his way through on Burt Welly. He's managed to run in clean air all of this time. Now he's under pressure from Andriy Chenkovan, so it's either, does he have good tyre wear? If he has good tyre wear, then he can stay out. If not, then I think he'll be coming into the pit lane, because running behind Andriy Chenkovan in the dirty air is only going to make that tyre wear a little bit worse. And he comes around the final few corners now. And as you say, he's lost the back end, so surely this is the time for him to come into the pit lane. No, he continues on.
No, he is going to come in. He's going to come inside. It was Luca Serafini I was talking about. Apologies. I thought that was my cue to come in just as he went round the big long sweeping right-hander in the third sector. You were talking about his tyre life falling off, and right on cue, he completely lost the back end. And I don't know how he saved it. I thought he was going straight into the wall. You'll be seeing it on the replay. I thought he was making a beeline for the wall, but he was able to save it and only lose about 3 seconds. But now this is not going to be an undercut attempt, because Owen Boldero, unless Owen Boldero has a moment on this lap, Luca Serafini will have a big gap to make up after that. But yeah, apologies for jumping in there. But wow, it was just right on cue. That's not good from Luca Serafini, and he'll be hitting himself going, maybe I should have boxed the lap earlier. The amount of times I've done that in league racing, when I've gone, maybe I should box this lap. I don't, and then I end up losing the rear end, or even going deep into a corner on the next lap, and then regretting that decision. But who knows? I mean, Owen Boldero's still got half a lap to do himself, and he may well have his own issues yet.
I did think, because I saw him have a little bit of a kick, did Owen Boldero, but I went, it wasn't that dramatic. But either way, he continues on in this race, potentially coming in on lap number 12, as well, there's fighting between Regan Harding and Paul Garung for 5th and 6th place at the moment. Paul Garung is going to try and run Regan as wide as he possibly can. Regan runs out of road, but keeps himself alongside and will be on the inside line into the next corner. Can he seal this position off of Paul Garung? He's going to try and do it, but Garung's going to send it back down the inside. Is he going to be able to hold onto it this time, or is Regan going to be able to sweep it back under the Mercedes? Mercedes is going to sweep around the outside. In fact, he's going to take the position as Dan Riley gets a time penalty for multiple warnings. Into the pit lane, though, comes Owen Boldero.
Yes, indeed. Yes, Owen's finally going to get off those tyres. Yes, that wasn't a dramatic rear end loss for Owen Boldero. I can see where that confusion happened. But yes, I imagine he will still come out ahead of Luca Serafini. Luca Serafini lost a good few seconds in that moment, but he is going pretty fast. Burt Welly currently does have the fastest lap, though. He's running pretty well. But everyone is going to put fresh hard tyres on. Good showing from Regan so far. I'm sure he'll be very happy with this showing, having had a qualifying ban. However, he will obviously be ruined the fact that he had that ban, because if he finishes well, he'll be thinking where he could have finished if he had started further up the order and not in P last. Owen Boldero has joined ahead of Luca Serafini, but not convincingly. And I tell you what, if Luca Serafini hadn't have made that mistake, he will be well ahead of Owen Boldero right now. And Owen Boldero, obviously nervous about Luca Serafini behind, has pushed the limits too far and now has a 3-second penalty. They are both on the back of Alexis Mason, but Alexis Mason has just enough to gap Owen Baldera behind. But will Luca Cerasini be able to go past Owen Baldera and get himself into that podium fight?
Yeah, keep those penalties in mind for later on in the race when they become a little bit more important, where particularly they're fighting over positions. Now we've got 4 drivers in the space of 1 DRS zone. Regan Harding going to the outside line of Ethan Shackleton, trying to make his way through, but he can't quite do so. That'll be Alexis Mason ahead of Owen Baldera, ahead of Luca Cerasini, and ahead of Ollie Matthews at 4th, down to 7th place. And Ollie Matthews trying to cling on to it, as is Owen Baldera, but they may well drop in and out of it. It's like doing the hokey cokey with the DRS, as Ollie Corlett loses the position to Brian Moore, and Burt Welly picks up another 3-second time penalty. We're at the halfway point of this race, and we've still got 3 pit stops yet to go. That'll be the top 3 drivers, Chenkovan, Riley and Garung, who haven't come into the pit lane just yet. And the two Mercedes drivers will have to think about it, because of course they'll be coming into the same pit box, but they will continue on at the moment nice and happily onto what will be lap number 14 of this race. And Ollie Corlett fighting away with Brian Moore. He won't mind about those time penalties because he's just fighting full track position. There is an end plate off for Brian Moore, so he will be a little bit slower naturally, but he will be quicker down the straights, and that is not what Ollie Corlett wants. But Corlett with the DRS is going to try and fight up into Big Red, the first corner on this racetrack. Just having a little bit of slipstream, taking it to the inside line, and he will be later onto the brakes into the uphill braking zone, which is incredibly, notoriously difficult to get right, as Brian Moore tried to cut and do the up and under and got a 3-second time penalty for his troubles.
Yeah, Ollie Corlett, I think, outbraked himself slightly there, caught himself off guard, and then caught Burt Welly off guard. Not Burt Welly, Brian Moore, apologies. I'll get all the names confused today. Caught Brian Moore off guard. He didn't realise he was going to be that slow on exit and went into the back of him. Of course, that means Ollie is 1 step closer to his goal of a point. Of course, he scored a point on debut, but he DNF'd last time out in the tricky Baku street circuit. We saw a few people become a cropper, should we say, in that track. But yeah, it's he'll be hoping to bounce back and get a point here. It's a big ask. We've got a lot of drivers on track. 13 of the 15 drivers, 14 drivers, apologies. But of course, Alexis Mason, being a reserve, has made up one of those drivers. So yeah, big ask to get into the points, but he's not out of it yet. However, the 15 seconds worth of penalties says that he's going to have a hard time. But yeah, he'll be hoping to try and not get any more, because there is a point in this game where you will get disqualified if you get too many. And if he gets another 15 and the second half of this race, he may well be. So he'll be hoping to try and clean that up. Owen Baldera keeps going in and out of the DRS range of Alexis Mason. So not quite doing enough, and Luca Cerasini isn't able to get past either of them, so he's probably been very frustrated right now. And this racing means that Ollie Matthews is now also part of this, and it's going to be a fun battle for 4th position. Of course, they will cycle up to the top 3 positions, or the top 4 positions, but of course, Andrea Chenkovan, Daniel Riley and Paul Garung will all try and come back a little later on their fresh tyres.
They certainly will. We will see what they do later on in this race, as well, of course, they haven't come into the pit lane just yet. They will be coming into the pit lane, I'd say, within the next few laps. I'd say the pit window is open now, because they can do 13 laps on that set of hard compound, or the 13 laps on the medium compound tyres even towards the end of the race. The longest we saw a first stint stretched was the 12 laps that we saw from Owen Baldera, that we saw from Burt Welly, and that we saw from Regan Harding as well, and Brian Moore, making it 4 drivers who went on to 12 laps of racing on those tyres. But I don't see why you wouldn't just stretch the stint if you do have the capability of doing so. I'm sure that's what they'll be thinking about right now. But 16 of 28, they'll be thinking about pitting at some point very soon, I would think. And we will be seeing where they end up. Big slide, actually, for Ollie Matthews on the exit of the first corner as he goes up, then down the hill. So it's not particularly easy to head through that segment, but he's keeping it going. And he's very much pushing at the moment, is Ollie Matthews. He was only 4/10 off of the fastest lap. He was the quickest man out on circuit last time out, and he set a personal best. So he really wants this DRS on Luca.
Yeah, and he's been in it and then dropped out of it again. So all 4 of these drivers, that being Alexis Mason down to Ollie Matthews, all keep going in and out of DRS. The only person who's consistently been in DRS for the last few laps is Luca Cerasini. But yeah, they all keep losing DRS, gaining DRS. So one lap they go faster, the next lap they're slower. And I tell you what, Owen Baldera is looking racy, and he is going to go for the move on Alexis Mason, and he's going to pull that one off. Alexis Mason is powerless to defend from that one, but Alexis Mason is going to try and come back on the next corner. They're going to run side by side through this third sector. We've seen this over and over again. Luca Serafini is watching this, waiting for a mistake. Owen Boldero defends the inside line so that nobody can pull an Ethan Shackleton on him, and Alexis Mason is therefore not able to come back at him again. But yeah, that was a great overtake from Owen Boldero. Luca Serafini will be hoping to come back through, but Alexis Mason will be hoping to go back ahead of Owen Boldero. Alexis Mason goes wide there, does not get a warning, so she'll be very happy about that. And this, I was about to say, is what Ollie Matthews into this. I thought it had. It hasn't. As Ollie has now. Ollie, call it this, that is, has been overtaken by Brian Moore, and Ollie Call It finds himself back in 13th position, now with 18 seconds worth of penalties. But I say, this battle for the podium positions is going to be a spicy one for the remaining 12 laps.
It certainly will be a very, very interesting fight towards the end of the race from this point onwards between Owen Boldero, Alexis Mason, Luca Serafini, and, if he can get back into range, Ollie Matthews into this fight. Regan Harding and Ethan Shackleton also ready to fight as well. And then Brian Moore and Ollie Corlett having a lot of fun at the back of the field. Andrew Chenkvan, Daniel Riley and Paul Garung all up the very top of the field. But now Garung is just about outside of DRS range of Owen Boldero, and so I would imagine he'll be the first one to duck into the pit lane. I think it's just going to be a case of Paul Garung is going to watch what Dan Riley does as Alexis Mason looks to the outside line of Owen Boldero. Couldn't quite find that gap out on the exit of the corner as Ollie Corlett's up to 21 seconds worth of penalties. Dare I say it, he will be disqualified at some point in this race. But now heading through the final few corners on this racetrack, Alexis Mason will want to get close to Owen Boldero, but she's had a couple of problems in turn 15 and 16, which means that Luca Serafini is going to be able to put all of the pressure on the back of the Haas driver. Is it going to be a pit stop for Paul Garung on this lap? Yes, it is. He wants nothing to do with this fight of these drivers on the hard compound tyres. He's going to make the switch onto the mediums for the final time this race.
He is, and I think Alexis needs to be really smart here, because it's a little bit short-sighted to be diving Owen Boldero up the inside, as this is what I was talking about. Andrea Chenkovan is now in this fight, and if they had battled a little less, they may well have been able to use each other's DRS and run away and build a big enough gap to Andrea Chenkovan that one of those two could fight for the win. However, this fighting has meant that Andrea Chenkovan has now come out in third position in DRS range of the both of them, and it's going to be almost impossible to hold him up. Of course, he can make a mistake still, as we know. He makes mistakes sometimes, even if they are rare. But yeah, I think that battling from the two of them was a little bit short-sighted, and that may be the reason that they don't get a win this time out, especially when you consider that Owen Boldero has 3 seconds of penalties, and that is a yellow sector. That's Ethan Shackleton. It would appear in the middle sector there, has gone the wrong way, and it's a virtual safety car, so this will neutralise the field as Ethan Shackleton will try and get back to the pit lane and put on a brand new wing, as his wing has now gone.
It certainly has. There is no front wing for Ethan Shackleton. Not quite sure what happened to the Ferrari, but that's disappointing. Huge ramifications for the Constructors' Championship as Aston Martin get ready to close in on them. Just a reminder of what they were pre-race, and hopefully this is going to be absolutely right. Yes, it is. The gap between first and second in the Constructors, was just going to be 34 points even between Ferrari and Aston Martin, so they could be penetrable late on in this season. 34 points being the difference. If Owen Boldero picks up 25 and Ollie Matthews picks up another 10, that will be 35 points they take home. And the way that it's looking at the moment, they will only pick up the 15 for Ferrari. So it'll be a 20-point swing, meaning that there'll be 14 between the top two teams as they head through the next couple of races, which of course we're coming to the end of the season now as Ethan Shackleton dives into the pit lane. We're coming to the end of this season, and we only have, after America, 4 races left in our 14 race calendar. Now we are into the double figures, race number 10 at COTA, and then we've got Brazil, Las Vegas, Qatar and Abu Dhabi to round us out for the season. I'd say that the Constructors' Championship isn't nearly done. I'd even go as far to say as the Drivers' Championship is still potentially up for grabs.
Yes, of course, there's there's so much to play for still, and it's going to be hard for these Aston Martins or either of the drivers to take either of the championships. But they are going to put up a defence here. And Boldero is going to make it easy for Alexis Mason to give her the inside, but he's going to try and go around the outside, and this is going to be a roadblock for Andrew Chenkovan. No, it's not. Andrew Chenkovan found the only gap on the track, and that's Andrew Chenkovan doing Andrew Chenkovan things there and finding gaps that a lot of drivers would not have found, and then is now going to sail away in first position and take an easy win. I really think these two have been very short-sighted with their racing today. They probably didn't. They're friends in real life. They probably just wanted a bit of fun and actually have a chance to battle each other. But they are the reason that they are not battling for the win, I would say. It's not to say that Andrew Chenkovan would not have taken it anyway, but they would have had a much better chance if they had worked together a bit earlier on, and then they could have fought for the win later on. But realistically, with Owen Boldero's penalties, that could have gone to Alexis Mason, but Owen Boldero could have maybe held on to a second position. But unfortunately, with a 2-second gap to Andrew Chenkovan, it's highly unlikely at this stage. Luca Serafini and Ollie Matthews do want to get involved in this. They do not have penalties, so they can all have a good go at this. They'll all get ahead of Owen Boldero if it finishes as it is, but they all want to get ahead of each other as well.
Yeah, they want to have a go as Ollie Corlett getting very close to being disqualified from the game because of 27 seconds worth of penalties currently added to his name. He'll be hoping to not pick up any more between now and the end of the race, but I think that's going to be very difficult for himself to police, of course, because you can get very, very close to the limit here in COTA. Take, for example, around towards the penultimate corner on the racetrack. That can be a very, very big moment. Alexis Mason looking to the inside of Owen Boldero, but he can't quite make his way through. And, well, Alexis can't quite find an opportunity just yet to jump through on Boldero's. There we go. Ollie Corlett, as I said, he's going to be disqualified if he gets too many penalties. There he goes. Very unfortunate for somebody who seems to be having a lot of fun out there. But out of the race goes Ollie Corlett. He's been disqualified, I think, the first disqualification since I started doing APC. I don't imagine it's a very common occurrence, but that is him out of this race on lap 20 of 28.
If my memory recalls correctly, it's the only disqualification in APC history. So he has made a history there. He's got himself a record, an APC record. Not one that he necessarily wants, but he's done it. And he's done it before Regan as well. Regan, of course, he's going to hate me for saying, but is known for his penalty count. But yeah, it's actually Ollie Corlett who was the first person to take that crown away. So Regan probably actually be pleased about that. As much as he loves a record, I don't think that's one he would have wanted. But yeah, unfortunate for Ollie Corlett, who wanted some points. But to get 30, I've got it here, it's 31 warnings. I believe it was. Was it gone? I believe it was. I believe that's what I remember seeing. By lap 21, I mean, yeah, he must have just been straight lining most of the first sector or something. I don't know how he managed to get that many. Of course, Brian Moore has 12. He's obviously a lot further away from disqualification, but yeah, he's the next closest, with Regan being true to form in third place for the battle for disqualification, which they're not actually going for, just to be clear. They're not actually doing that. That is just me being funny. So, as it currently stands, Alexis Mason is in third position. Net P2 is going to be Luca Serafini in fourth position. That is going to be the final step on the podium as it stands. Ollie Matthews very much struggling to stay in the DRS range of Luca Serafini. Luca Serafini has the pace on Ollie today, and that's not something we say often. We've seen podiums from the likes of Luca before, but Ollie usually tends to have just a bit of an edge on him. But that's not what's happening here today. This seems to be a good track for Luca, and he'll be hoping he could have done a lot better than what will likely be third position, assuming no penalties come in. I hope I haven't jinxed him by saying that. But yeah, he'll be happy with a podium, I'm sure. But Andrew Chenkovan, as always, in a league of his own.
Yes, Andrew Chenkovan. He did look as though he'd been threatened the last few rounds, did Andrew Chenkovan. So it looked like he may well have been penetrable, but it doesn't look as though that is going to be the case anymore with just 6 laps to go in this race, and the strategy that he went for clearly being the right one, starting on the hards and going over to the mediums. We take, for example, Dan Riley, who moved up from 10th up to 6th with that strategy, and we take Paul Garung, who has basically kept it in and around where he started, but the other two gaining from their strategy and moving up positions. They'll be very, very happy about that one indeed. And Andrei Chenkovan, of course, as we say, is looking likely to go on to take the victory here today in COTA. And, well, we'll be happy to take it because of the way that his season's gone over the last few rounds. He's looked penetrable, but I don't think he's going to be, in the end, very, very easy to catch up with, especially this race where he's just had the pace over the rest of the field and he's consistently been the fastest. Like even in the wet conditions that we saw earlier on in qualifying, he was able to eke out that gap so very much. It was unbelievable the first lap time that he threw in, and then he followed it up with an even quicker one. Ollie Matthews out of the race. That could be absolutely huge with the championship ramifications at stake. It's the first full safety car of the race.
Ollie Matthews, yeah, looks like he done that completely on his own. I was watching the main stream and I just saw it in the background, but I do believe, don't quote me on this, we have a good replay of that and we'll be looking at it as I'm saying this if we have it. If we don't have it, then I look silly as we're looking at the cars of Burt Welly and Dan Riley go through the first sector. But yes, there is the graphic. So yeah, that has changed the complexity of this race, but also the championship. This has massive championship ramifications. Now, this does mean that Andrei Cenkovan's win is not quite as nailed on as we thought it was, but Ollie Matthews needed to do damage limitation with Andrea being that high up, and he's not going to be able to do so, and that leaves Owen Baldero with the mantle of trying to get as many points for the team championship as possible. But with that 3-second penalty, everyone is going to be in that range at the safety car restart, so he'll be hoping to build as big of a gap as possible without getting any more penalties. But that is not the ending for Ollie Matthews I was expecting, and I would dare say that's not the ending he was expecting.
No, it's not the ending he was expecting. Definitely not the ending he would have been wanting. He'll be absolutely devastated, will the Maltese driver, for the way that race has gone. Anybody into the pit lane for a set of softs at the end of this race would not be a fool, I don't think. And, well, we've lost 2 Ollies throughout the course of this race. One through disqualification, one through crashing out of the final corner. Massively unfortunate there for our main championship contender, Chenkovan, who, of course, would have been on a high after last week. But no such luck here today. And Ollie Matthews out of the race. Who's going to be coming in on this lap for a set of the soft compound tyres? It's going to be, it looks like it's going to be Dan Riley, Owen Baldero, Alexis Mason, and, well, basically everybody on this field. Andrei Chenkovan already been and gone into the pit lane, and he'll be back out onto the circuit once again. Dan Riley, in fact, the only driver not to come into the pit lane, so he's taken a gamble. This could be big in terms of the race because now Andrei Chenkovan has a buffer.
Yes, that is not ideal for the drivers. I don't think that was the right call at all for Daniel Riley. He is going to get eaten up and having penalties, of course, that he has. That is not the right shout. I mean, he obviously wanted to try something different. He was a lot higher up the field. Looks like Regan and Connor actually put their soft tyres on the previous lap, which not something I'd have done. I'd have waited until the following lap to have the fresher tyres. But yeah, not ideal for the drivers behind Daniel Riley, and I don't think that was the right call for Dan Riley. He's not going to defend a good position from here on in. He might stay ahead of the likes of sort of Connor, Ethan, Brian, but that's where he was ahead of anyway. So he might as well have pit and had fresh tyres to defend from him. So, I mean, we'll wait and see how this one plays out. But that actually could mean that Andrei Chenkovan does get the win after all. But yeah, I'm sure Andrew would love a fight though. So maybe Dan, I highly doubt it, Dan might just pull off to the side and let those cars behind through. But I think that would negate the idea of him actually staying out in the first place. So I don't see that happening. But I am curious to see what this safety car restart looks like. But unfortunately, it looks like Dan Riley's going to play a part in this, and that may well mean that it's not the feisty fight for the win that we're hoping for.
Well, we saw a feisty fight involving Dan Riley in the sprint race and potentially we'll be seeing a similar thing in the main race itself. Of course, he will be starting from that second place, which is what he was fighting so hard for, what they were all fighting so hard for after the sprint race. And we'll be seeing what will happen next lap as Connor Stewart Woodard and Ethan and Brian will catch back up into the pack. And then we'll be getting back to green flag racing as soon as we possibly can, when everybody has managed to clear out of the way and catch back up to the field. But it's very, very interesting to see, I think, the end of this race. A lot of the drivers went onto a set of the soft compound tyres. In fact, all of them that came into the pit lane went onto a set of the softs. So those tyres at the very, very end of the race will be dead. They will be absolutely buried. So maybe Dan Riley going out on these tyres, trying to clutch at straws here potentially, but I think those tyres will be better in the final lap of the race. But of course we'll have to wait and see, because we don't know how well he's managed them throughout the course of the stint or whatever. But we'll see what Dan Riley is capable of doing come the end of the race. Because of course, as I say, those tyres could be better. But it's about the area of the pit stop window. If they were 2 laps younger, I'd say most likely. This lap, though, I think it's slightly less likely than it is. But, of course, he's had that virtual safety car where he could have neutralised the tyres. He needed to manage them so incredibly hard to get them to this point where, if they're even any semblance of manageable, then I think he'll be in pretty good stead after all.
Yeah, I mean, we could be saying this, and then he might just go and win the race, you know? I mean, fresh soft tyres are likely to be absolutely rapid. But, you know, Dan surprised us in the past. Not so much this season. He's had a really struggle of a season, which is very odd. You know, we've seen Dan Riley absolutely smash the field in previous seasons. So this is a very odd thing for us to see. And, as you know, and it's not nice to see. You know, we'd love all these drivers to be consistently fighting each other, as that looks like a broken front wing potentially for Owen Boldero as he runs into the back of Dan Riley. In fact, I think he's just got away with it, but we are getting ready for the restart.
We certainly are getting ready to go back to green flag racing. It's going to be a mad dash to the end for the last 3 laps of this race. Most of the drivers on a new set of the soft compound tyres, apart from Dan Riley, who's on a set of the mediums. He finds himself in second place, and he will be absolutely swarmed into the first corner by the likes of Owen Boldero, Alexis Mason, Lucas Aracini, everybody like that. Andrew Chenkovan's already set off, and Dan Riley didn't catch it. So it's a big, big gap already from Chenkovan as Dan Riley spins around the final corner. That could be huge, because now he's out of the way, and there's now fights going on for second place. 1.6 seconds, though, the gap between Chenkovan and Owen Boldero. So a huge, huge moment throughout the course of this race, with Dan Riley spinning to the back of the field. So his gamble didn't pay off. Owen Boldero defended from Alexis Mason. He's going to have to do a little bit more to stay ahead of the Haas driver as he desperately tries to catch up to Chenkovan. But I think the Ferrari driver, I mean, you make your own luck, but he's just been handed an incredible slice of it.
I've said it once and I'll say it again. Alexis and Owen are ruining their own chances of a good position here by battling each other and not going after the championship leader, Andrea Chenkovan. But as you say, Daniel Riley, of course, having such a poor restart. Not only is he on the least grippy tyres of the entire field, but he also didn't even catch the leader restarting that race, which meant Owen Boldero took the final turn as quick as he possibly could. And Dan Riley had a really poor exit, which meant they came together. It is the front right tyre onto the rear left tyre of Daniel Riley, and that spanned Daniel Riley round. Daniel, as Luca does a late dive to the inside of Alexis Mason there. That's a fantastic move from Luca, although Alexis Mason, a little bit of contact as Alexis Mason wants to try and come back. Luca is going to try and hold this one then round the down the outside, apologies, and Alexis is going to get this back, and Alexis is going to better go past Owen Boldero here. Owen Boldero must have run wide and had a bad exit there, because Owen Boldero was suddenly there as they came around the corner. And now they're all going to have a go on Owen Boldero. It's Alexis on Owen. It's Luca on Owen. It's Luca on Alexis. It's Bert on Luca. They are all fighting. And I don't know where to look, as this podium positions here, this could go to any one of these drivers.
certainly could. It could swing any way at the end of this race. Just the 2 laps to go, and Andrei Chenkovan has that gap of 3.2 seconds. So I think it's going to swing any way, apart from for the race lead. Boldero defending from Alexis Mason at the moment, and it's going to be Luca Seracini picking up a penalty in 4th place. That will be absolutely crucial, because that means Alexis Mason is basically guaranteed P2, and Paul Garung could jump up and score some crucial points for Mercedes after all of that. So it's going to be very fascinating heading on to the final lap. Andrei Chenkovan, big gap. Alexis Mason to the outside of Owen Boldero. I'm not sure Boldero is going to fight her too hard. In fact, he is, and it's going to be a big lunge back, holding station and holding position for Boldero into the final sector.
Yeah, you take that back, says Owen Boldero. He's like, I will fight this. And I mean, he's obviously doing this for honours. We've seen Owen Boldero go for fastest laps for honours, and now he's obviously trying to go for P2 just for honours, because as we know, Alexis Mason will take this on the line. Of course, we don't know that Alexis Mason won't get a penalty herself, but and that's another 3-second penalty for Bert Welly as he goes wide into that final complex there, just across the white line. But Alexis Mason does want this on track as well, as much as Owen Boldero does, and she swings around the outside and will take turn 1. Luca has a little look on Owen. Of course, Luca and Owen are fighting for position. They are both on 3 seconds of penalties, and they are fighting to actually finish ahead of one another. So that's probably why I think Bert Welly is hanging back. He's allowing his teammate just to have a run on the Aston Martin driver ahead. Another 3-second penalty for Regan. There was one for Brian Moore earlier as well. And as you say, Paul Garung is going to be the biggest winner out of all of these drivers here. He may well jump up to 3rd position as long as nothing happens ahead of him and he doesn't get a penalty of his own. So the real fights here are Luca and Owen, and Bert Welly needs to try and hope that he can stay within the penalty windows of the cars in front. And I dare say he is in a great position to do so, as Andrei Chenkovan heads into the 3rd sector for the final time.
He certainly does, and what a race he's had. The strategy for Andrei Chenkovan has been supreme, and he will head home in a very, very strong position and will come home to take the victory. You would imagine 4 seconds ahead of Alexis Mason, who holds it on track at the moment, and of course after penalties will pick it up anyway. Paul Garung 1 second off the back of Bert Welly, so one more lap and I think he wouldn't have been able to pick up that podium. But Andrei Chenkovan, I don't think this ever looked in doubt for the Ferrari, who comes across the line to take the victory. 2nd place will be Alexis Mason, just ahead of Owen Boldero, but after penalties are applied, it's Paul Garung who picks up that final step on the podium. Boldero in 4th, Seracini in 5th, and Welly in 6th, with Shackleton in 7th, Stuart Woodard in 8th, Harding in 9th, and then rounding out the top 10 is going to be Brian Moore. But what a great end to that race indeed that we had. It got a little bit nervy between a lot of the drivers, but at the end of the race, it was, of course, the inevitable Andrei Chenkovan who took the win.
What a great showing from Andrei Chenkovan there, but big props to Paul Garung, who kept it clean, kept it within the 2 white lines, and then benefited from other people's penalties at the line there. Of course, obviously benefit from a late safety car. We can't forget that after that magnificent crash from Ollie Matthews. It's a bad day to be someone called Ollie, as you alluded to earlier, as both Ollies were out of that race. One through crashing on their own on the final corner, and one by just getting disqualified for too many penalty points. He's blamed the glitch, he's blamed the EA glitches, but I don't think that's probably what happened. But you know, I've been proven wrong in the past, but a great showing. I think Alexis and Owen were focused too much on each other there and not on the win. If they had been able to stay ahead of Andrei Chenkovan when that safety car came out, then they may well have been battling for the win. Daniel Riley, of course, was in the wrong place at the wrong time for them drivers, unfortunately. But that's racing. You know, he did nothing wrong by being there. He was very much allowed to stay out and stay on those old medium tyres. But yes, that's not an ideal ending for all the drivers involved, other than Andrei Chenkovan, who takes another win. Of course, we didn't get the results on screen there. I was watching to see if they'd pop up, but unfortunately this game sometimes does this.
Well, in the end, it was, of course, as we say, Andrei Chenkovan who took the victory. at the very top of that field. Alexis Mason would come home in second place, despite not picking up second place on track. It would be off track, it did pick up that second place on track even on the final lap, and was ahead of Owen Boldero, who wanted to fight incredibly hard for that position, did try to fight incredibly hard for that position, but in the end was not able to pick it up. Lucas Erasini and Bert Welly were in 4th and 5th. But of course, at the end of it, it was Chenkvan, then Mason, then Garung on that podium. Then it was Boldero, Serasini, Bert Welly, who would come home in 6th place. Then Shackleton, Connor Stewart-Woodard, and then Regan Harding, Dan Riley, and Brian Moore rounding out our field. Brian Moore, the only non-points finisher, which is very unfortunate for him, and I'm sure he'll join us in the box. But we do have one driver who did end up picking up points, picking up on the misfortune of the penalties for him. And, we won't be joined by Regan Harding, who's just disappeared from the box. Anyway, we will look at the next driver up, and it will be... is it going to be... We've got Owen Boldero in the box. There we go. There's Brian Moore. We killed enough time waiting for the Kick Sauber. Brian, how was your race?
It was alright. Could have been better. Could have got points, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it seemed to be that a couple of drivers struggled with penalties. You were one, and Ollie Corlett was the other one. Just why and how was it difficult to keep it within the white lines?
On control, the S's is absolutely horrific. That, and not just that, but when you have people like sometimes trying to make a move down through the S's, it just gets really off-putting. And then you have like turn 1 and then the sort of hairpin go onto the back straight. They're difficult enough for it as well. So there's areas where it's just difficult to just keep it in the white lines, especially for on controller.
Yes, I can't imagine it's particularly easy to be able to keep it within the lines, especially around this circuit, where there are some parts of it where you can really push yourself off. We did see throughout the course of the race and of the season so far that you might be in a late-on fight with the Haas drivers. Ollie Corlett, who was able to pick up a couple of positions, but unfortunately was disqualified. Just how was the battle between yourself and him?
I think I had more pace in the race, but I kind of realised that I didn't have the same pace as those in front of me, so I just kind of dropped back to give a little bit of a fight with him. But the fight with him, it's good. Both he's sort of clean and he's got decent pace, so it's fun to have battles like that with him.
Yeah, that's fair enough. That's all from me. Have you got anything, Carl, before we let Brian go?
Brian, we didn't see much of you this race. Not a lot happened. What were you up to?
I was just sitting there, just listening to my music, just trying not to get disqualified. I sort of, when I realised Ollie's penalties, I kind of made a little bit of a joke of, is he trying to get more penalties than laps in the race? And I feel bad for making the joke because he ended up getting disqualified, but I thought the disqualification window was more than 27 seconds, so
It was 30.
It was 30. Yeah, I thought it was 30. It said 27 on my screen, so I got confused, but I kind of felt bad when he got disqualified. But yeah, it's just part of racing at times, but I was just there trying not to get disqualified like he did.
Yeah, of course. Well, at least you finished. I think you were the only finisher who didn't actually get any points. I'm sorry to say, just to end the interview on a down note there, but no, it's great. Yeah, you made it to the end. You didn't get obviously disqualified. I think, if I remember correctly, you were the next closest. So well done on not doing so. But good points for the team. Of course, Connor had got some good points. You obviously massively jumped up the order after the sprint. I think you had the highest gain in position. So you've got a battle on your hands still for the remaining 4 races. So I'm sure we'll see more of you and some more points coming from you in the next few races. But thank you for joining us as always, and we look forward to doing this all again next week.
No worries. You're welcome.
That was Brian Moore, who ended up the only non-point scoring finisher, but it takes one thing to finish a race. So we'll hand him his props. Next up on our list, and next up in the interview waiting room will be Luca Saraceni, who will join us in the commentary box. Now, Luca, an up and down race, it certainly seemed to be. How was it from your perspective?
Terrible. It was absolutely terrible. I don't know where all my pace went. Like in the sprint, I had really good pace, but it kind of got wiped out. And then in the race, I had no pace, but ended up actually having some nice battles. But I just got a really stupid 3-second pen at the end, and it dropped me 2 places.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. The penalties seem to be the definition of today. Just how difficult was it to keep within the white lines? Because it seemed more difficult than I found it, but I know that my experience isn't necessarily at this level.
To be honest, in the sprint, it was because I had no front wing. I didn't want to pit, so that was always going to happen. But in the actual race, it wasn't that bad. I ended up getting 2 warnings right at the start because I just wanted to get past Chenky and Ethan, even if I used a warning or 2. So I didn't cut the track, but I went a bit off to get past Chenky, and it worked. And then at the end, on like the hards, I was right behind, I don't know if it was Owen or Alexis. They were both fighting, and I just tried to go past Alexis and just cut the corner and got a pen for it.
Yeah, that's fair enough. It's not very easy sometimes, but yeah, that is the way that it can be. That's all from me. Kyle, have you got anything for Luca?
Yeah, I guess just based on what you said there, do you think in hindsight you would have been you should have been a bit more conscious of your warnings, given that you ended up getting that penalty by accident? Do you think if you had been a bit more conscious earlier on and a bit more careful, that penalty wouldn't have come and you may have been fighting for the podium? And I guess the second question to that as well is, what obviously you fought Owen Boldero towards the end there for that position. Of course, that was for position as you had the same penalty points. What did Owen Boldero have over you over those last few laps that stopped you getting past?
The first question. Oh, what was the first question?
Oh yeah, should you have been more careful with your earlier
right.
Yeah.
I don't think so, because if I wouldn't have made the 2 moves, I would have been stuck behind Ethan and Chenky, so I would have been probably in the same place I was before, fighting with Ethan and maybe even my teammate Bert. So I think it was probably the right decision, but I should have been a bit more careful towards the end, to be honest. And then with the second one, he just had DRS on Alexis, and I couldn't do anything. Like, I put my wings a bit lower than him, and I could see that, especially in the sprint as well. I was a lot quicker than people on the straights, but like if someone else also has DRS, it's nearly impossible to get past them unless you launch one on someone. So
yeah, that's fair enough. Well, it looks like your teammate was helping you there. I was on board with your teammate, and he had 6 seconds worth of penalty, so I think he was being quite fair in the end there. Was, I guess, getting past you wouldn't have really benefited him anyway, so he was willingly won, it would seem, to get past Owen Boldero, but you didn't do it, unfortunately. But there are 4 more races for you to do it, so congratulations anyway. Good points there. Obviously, I know it could have been a podium, it could have been better, but you take what you can at this stage in the season, I'm sure. And hopefully you'll come back stronger next week out.
thank you.
Thanks.
Well, that was, of course, Luca Saraceni. Next up, though, we're going to head to Owen Boldero, who I'd imagine there'd be some frustration for. Owen, how was that race from your perspective?
A lot is the best way to put it. So the sprint, since we didn't get a chance to talk about it, sorry, I'm just finishing something off. I'm just eating something. So the sprint was interesting. I went on the wrong tyre by accident. Me and Ollie were just talking, and I selected soft to try and cover what I was gonna do. But then when I readied up, I forgot to deselect the softs, so I started on them, and I knew they weren't going to the end, not in any universe. So I pitted like lap 4 because I saw from that massive battle that Ollie, Bert, Dan, all that lot were having, I was actually gaining like a relatively solid amount, so I went for it. So I went in, pitted for mediums, gained a lot, got myself past Brian and Connor, and then I suppose the talking point was the final lap. I I'm not going to say too much on it because I have reported it to the stewards the final lap of the sprint. It wasn't caught on stream, I don't think, but Dan went for something which was never going to work. But it's in the hands of the stewards now, so I won't talk too much anymore about it. And then quali of the main race, I invalidated my final run, so that kind of sucked. I only lost out to Ollie, so it wasn't the end of the world. And then the race, well, first stint was mixed. I got myself into the lead due to some other incidents, but my tyres just fell away. So I tried to hang it out for as long as I could, and then pitted. And in that middle stint, the hards, they felt good. They felt bad, but I was actually quite quick. So in that, it was kind of mixed. I felt good and bad. But the racing with Alexis from the middle stint all the way to the end of the race was some of the best I've ever had in a long time. It was so perfect, the racing. But yeah, the safety car came out because obviously Ollie crashed. I have been asked by Ollie to say on his behalf that the curb at the last corner threw him out. He did the same thing as he did every other lap, and it just spun him, he said. So yeah, that's what caused the safety car. And he's also quite unwell, so that sucked for him. And then yeah, final stint after the safety car. Felt like I was going to be a bit screwed because I obviously had the free. No one else around me had one. And then I saw Bert and Luca get a pen, and I was like, right, I'm going to keep Alexis behind for the next 2 laps, try and keep myself protected. And then on the final lap, I purposely let Alexis go taking down the start straight, so I would have DRS down the back, so I could protect myself from them. And I just missed out on the podium, unfortunately. But yeah, it was a good comeback in the final stint, considering I thought I was going to be about 9th.
That's pretty comprehensive. That covers all of the questions I had for you. Kyle, have you got anything for Owen?
I mean, he didn't really give us much information there, did it? I think we need a bit more. Owen, yes. I mean, to be fair, no idea what I'm going to ask you. I'm going to make this up on the spot because you've covered everything. I did know what I'm going to ask you, actually. It's a question that I questioned multiple times during the race, and I was waiting to ask you. Do you think, I mean, look, it's a different perspective from me sat here doing comms and you in the car, but do you not think that the hard battling with Alexis in the middle part of that race was a little bit short-sighted when you consider that Andrea Chenkovan, was running away up front? I couldn't help but feel that if you two worked together a bit more, you could have had a bigger gap to Andrea Chenkovan when he came out of the box, out of the pit lane, and then you actually could have just been fighting each other for the win later on. And also, when that safety car came out, you may well have been ahead of Andrea Chenkovan still and been able to restart ahead of him and ahead of Dan Riley. So, I mean, that's just how it looks from our perspective. But, of course, from a driver's perspective, do you think we're onto something there, or do you think it wouldn't have made much of a difference?
I don't think it would have made much of a difference. I don't feel that my pace was good enough to be with the top two being in this race Alexis and Andrea Chenkovan. But me and Alexis didn't really start battling hard and really hard until Andrea Chenkovan was already past us. We had a couple of side-by-sides before that, but it was only 2, I believe. One where I overtook Alexis, and then Alexis tried it again to get back past me, but it didn't quite work. So we probably only lost second and a half from it, probably. And then the hard battling really started once Andrea Chenkovan was past us, because Chenkovan had the mediums that were 5 laps newer than mine, and 7 or so newer than Alexis's hards. So I don't think it would have made much of a difference for me. Maybe for Alexis it might. That might be a question to ask Alexis, but I personally don't feel for my race it made any difference, because I don't think I could have been ahead of Chenky anyway.
Maybe ahead of Daniel Riley, though. Maybe he would have had a different ending, but I understand your point. So thank you for giving us an answer to that, and thank you for joining us in the box. And I look forward to asking that exact same question to Alexis shortly, and we'll speak to you next week.
Yeah, see you later, guys.
Well, on that note, we will bring Alexis into the box, and Kyle, far away.
Alexis, question for you. So, it's easy for us, obviously, in the box to judge what's going on track. But of course, you guys on track may see something different. But I couldn't help but feel that battling with Owen Baldero in the middle of the race there was the reason that Andrew Chenkovan came out so close to you after the pit stop phase, and the reason he was so far ahead at the safety car restart. Do you not feel that potentially, if you guys worked together a bit more in the middle of the race, that when it came to that safety car, you may well have been ahead of Andrew Chenkovan, or at least ahead of Daniel Riley, and would have then been able to battle for the lead?
Well, no one was beating Andrew Chenkovan today. There was just no way. He was way too quick. Even if we were working together, he would have caught up, got past. With that kind of pace, there was just no denying that. He was quick today. Very, very quick.
Well, that answers my question. Thank you very much. Joseph, I will hand over to you for the rest.
Well, I mean, we just wanted to ask that because that was you were jumping in straight after Owen. But do you want to just take a look at your race more broadly? How was it from your perspective?
I thought it was really beneficial. I got new wheels, so it was kind of just jumping into something I'm not really know. I didn't have any practice, which was probably a mistake. And I got in, and it was raining. So there's my practice out the window. But I felt like I had good pacing quality until I was 1.2 seconds off, which I was surprised about. And then I think I was happy with my race. Of course, not the win, but no one was beating Andrew Chenkovan today.
No, it didn't seem like anybody really had the pace to. And then, of course, you fighting with Owen it wouldn't have helped you in that scenario. We saw Daniel Riley spin after the safety car. Just what was going through your mind when that happened?
Why did he not pit onto softs? Because even if he didn't have the spin, I still think he would have been finishing last on track. The softs were so quick, and he was on old mediums. I think that was a blunder.
It's a question that we were asking ourselves in the box as well, to be fair. But
It's like if you're playing chess and you just give away your queen. That's what you did today. Gave away his queen.
Yeah, that's what I said when I went through my last breakup as well. But that's all I had for you, Alexis. I don't know, Kyle, if you had any more questions for
That's what you date, man.
our second place finisher, and then we'll move on. I'm going to ignore that, and then we'll move on.
I don't, and I'm gonna we'll let Alexis go before she starts singing.
There we go.
Oh, there's no birthdays today.
Well, I'm not going to tell you whose birthday it was on Saturday. Goodbye.
Mary.
Oh, I
Anyway,
forgot about that.
Regan Harding is in the waiting room currently, with his ears hurting potentially from what Alexis Mason has just provided. But Regan, tell me about your race.
What is there to tell? It went absolutely dreadfully. I obviously couldn't do qualifying, and then I made up a few positions. Was very, very happy to get P7, and then just the end of the S's in Sector 1, I just was an idiot, and I cut it too tight and got obviously 3-second time penalty, and that dropped me from P7 to P9. So still points, but when there's only 13 people on the race, points doesn't really feel that good.
Are you in a church hall or something at the moment? Because it
I
sounds
did
very
think the
roomy.
same thing.
Hang on. No, I'm in my bathroom actually. I'm washing my hands. Hang on.
Only Regan.
Well,
Okay.
we'll.
It may be better now. Sorry, go on.
It is definitely better. But yeah, I mean, it seemed like a really up and down weird one for you. It didn't seem to be particularly. It didn't seem to be the most particularly notable race from your perspective, but yeah, I think it was just. Are you happy with ninth in the end, or do you feel like there was more in it?
I feel like 7 was in it. I don't think much more than that was in. I think at the start of the race, I kind of made my decision up where I'm going to be relatively passive. I don't want to get any front wing damage. Don't want to wear the tires. I kind of just sit back and relax. And I think obviously hindsight 2020, but I think that I was too passive, that I lost a bit of time. I feel like I would have been happy. Look, I say this to you guys every time. The goal is always top 5. That is always the goal. So I knew I wasn't going to get.
I had settled early on in the race before the safety car came out, and that I was going to be P8, and that was it. And then it suddenly went from a P8, P9 to a P7, and then I was obviously quite happy with that. And then I messed up at the end, so it wasn't that noticeable. It was quite boring, quite lowly. I mean, I had I don't know if you guys saw, I had like 1 or 2 fights at the end of that DRS straight down the back. But that was pretty much it. Otherwise, I just stuck to the strategy, and I kind of just hope and prayed something different would come out. Texas is definitely not one of my strongest tracks. I mean, Brazil next week is going to be worse. I can tell you that for now. But so I kind of went in, obviously not doing qualifying. I didn't know what to expect, and then as I said, I think I might have been too passive on the start. Do I think I would have been on the level of Burt and all those? Probably not, but I definitely would have been faster than the Merc, the Clover guy. But yeah, it's a bit annoying to be honest. I feel like I would have been happy with a P7 or a P6, but P9 it is.
Yeah, P9 it ended up being for yourself, and I think that's all I had for you today, Regan. Is there any questions that you had, Kyle?
Yeah, I'm just also trying to work out who's renamed themselves to Mr. P4 himself. I think it's Owen Boldero,
yeah,
but
it's Owen.
okay, I got me really confused. Apologies, Regan. Yeah, look, P9, 9th in the championship as well. It was a good show. I mean, you got to obviously not ignore the fact that you did start at the back for reasons. So you done well. You made it through. I saw some good battles, as Joseph alluded to there. It was kind of quiet from you. You didn't really get far up the order, but you had some good battles. There were some good clean battles. There was a lot of damage out there today, and you managed to avoid all that. Of course, we didn't get to see you in the sprint as you weren't available, which is unfortunate, as I'm sure you would have had a lot of fun on that one. But I guess like you say, Brazil's not your track. What do you need? What do you need to get that top 5? Do you need to get a bit more practice in? Do you need to just get a bit of luck on your side? What is it? Is it the luck of the Irish isn't there at the moment?
I think the luck of the Irish isn't there, but I feel like it's going to come. I do think I do need a bit of luck, absolutely, and I think I just need to be in the right place at the right time, because I'm in a weird space where I feel like I'm quicker than a lot of the guys in the grid, and then I'm kind of on my own, and then I'm a lot slower than the guys in front of me. So sometimes I feel like I'm kind of just stuck, where I would get past a bunch of slow cars, and then I'm too far behind the guys who are ahead to even challenge. So I think I need a bit of luck. Yeah, my hopes are just genuinely not high for Brazil. I don't know. I think maybe I'm sort of so worried about messing up my race in relation to damage or tire wear that sometimes I'm too passive, and then I almost have to hope that something is going to happen, which shouldn't be the case at all. So I think Brazil out next week. I'm going to just absolutely send it. I missed the sprint, by the way, because I got the timing wrong. I thought we started at the usual time, which is my fault. I know for next time. But anyway, I'm going to do something different in Brazil. I'm not going for a 1-stop. I'll go for a 2-stop, or I'll play something different. I don't know, but I can tell you guys now, and you can mention this next week if you want. There is no way I finish anywhere near the top. And come next week, if I'm top 5 or anywhere near it, I will be over the moon.
That sounds like we need to give him something. What, shave your head or something? If you sort of, I don't know, something like that. But I
or something.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, I will be over the moon for you, Regan, if you do. So I'll be looking forward to watching that one, and hopefully you'll join us in the comms box afterwards once again, as we always love speaking to you. But until then, we'll speak to you then.
Thank you, gentlemen. See you then.
Yeah, thank you very much, Regan, for joining us in the commentary box. That is it for the interviews that we've got this evening. Carl, any final thoughts before we end off our evening, which started a few hours ago now?
It did, yeah. A bit of a crazy one, wasn't it? It was there was a lot to unpick from that one, and I'm not going to unpick it all. But Andrew Chenkovan back on form. Of course, he wasn't actually bulletproof today. He had his own moments, especially in the sprint. But yeah, he did finish in the position that he knows so well. Alexis Mason. I think this is the first time she's finished behind him on track when she's been driving. Well, ignoring the DNF, of course. Paul Garung, what a comeback from Paul Garung. We've seen Paul Garung's pace last season, of course, wasn't here for the first half of the season, sat in reserve role, joined the Mercedes lineup, and has struggled a little bit since he's come back. But he's got a winning sprint and then got third position in the main race. So 2 podiums, and that has propelled him up the championship order. I believe that puts him into 8th position from 17th. So what a showing from Paul Garung. Not a great showing from the Aston Martin boys. I think this may well hinder their championship hopes in both championships. They're not out mathematically yet, but they are very close to being. So they need to fix that as we go into the next 4 races. But yeah, other than that, you know, it's a good showing from a lot of drivers, and it's not a good day to be called Ollie.
No, it certainly isn't. That's the bigger takeaway. Hopefully, next time out, it will be a little bit better. But until next time, it is goodbye.
The action's underway.
Stamps' authority once again.
My word, this could go wrong. On the brakes, goodness me, what a launch.
Look at that.
It just all comes down to this